Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi, Dom. Did I turn the button off? Leave it on? Turn it off? Leave it on? Down on the pin?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this happens one time per year. It happened with Dr. Dolan last year, where the superintendent, according to North Shore Schools Board of Education Policy 2210, calls the meeting to order at the annual reorganization meeting, and I shall preside at the meeting until the election of a new Board of Education president. So I just want to say to start, welcome and thank you all. Please note that the Board of Education met in executive session to discuss the proposed pending or current litigation and the employment of a particular person or persons and collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the Taylor Law. I'm going to start the meeting by asking everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the awkward first action that we have is actually is the swearing in of me, the superintendent. Thank you. At this point, we're going to ask Ms. Campy to swear in our newly elected trustees. We have 3 newly elected board trustees. Congratulations, trustees. And now we are complete. At this time, we will now move forward to the election of board officers. And in doing so, I need to call for nominations first. Are there any nominations for the position of President of the Board of Education? Trustee Mossman.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Dave Ludmar. Dave has led the board for this past long year and prior through the inevitable ups and downs of running a $115 million enterprise, through this past year of extraordinary change in all the highest district leadership positions, and through the constantly roiling and very muddy waters of the LIPA morass, and I chose that word specifically. With great constancy, he has maintained truly remarkable decorum, steadiness, good humor, mastery of all the details throughout the seemingly endless breadth and depth of the board president's job, and most importantly, tireless devotion to the students of the North Shore School District. In short, he has excelled at every quality one could wish for in a school district leader, and I believe there is no one better suited to the role. For this and many other reasons, I nominate Dave Ludmar to be president of the North Shore School Board of Education.
Thank you, Trustee Mosca. Are there any seconds? Are there any other nominations for the office of President of the Board of Education? Hearing none, I will now call for a vote. All those in favor of electing David Ludmar as President of the Board of Education signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Nay? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That's my last time. Congratulations.
Thank you. We have a long meeting today, so I'm not going to really say anything other than just appreciation for my fellow trustees bestowing their faith in me. Maria, those are very kind words. Thank you. I hope I can live up to them again. I'm really looking forward to doing this again. It is. People say that you don't get any thanks for these jobs, but it is actually very rewarding to do this, and I do appreciate the honor, and I hope I'm worthy of it again. So, thank you, everyone. And for the record, I also was, as you all saw, was sworn in twice. So I want to once again congratulate Trustee Russo on her reelection, and of course all of her service to this district, and Lisa Cashman, congratulations on your election, and all the future service this district ahead of you. So I appreciate both of you. And with that, I will ask for a nomination for the Vice President of the North Shore School Board. Please.
For the last 2 years, this board has had the unique benefit of having a trustee who is a doctoral level clinical psychologist. Dr. Andrea McCarry's expertise and advocacy for whole child education, evidence-based mental health services, and robust special education programs are critical, particularly in this post-pandemic world. Andrea takes her role as trustee seriously and comes prepared and ready to contribute collegially to every meeting. She raises important and thoughtful questions about the quality of our children's education, about their well-being, and about how and where we spend the district's funds, all while carefully respecting our process. Furthermore, in the upcoming years, North Shore will be faced with the challenge of maintaining our district's identity, philosophy, and values in the midst of a multi-million-dollar shortfall in taxes because of LIFA. Who better to understand the importance of preserving a North Shore education than someone who has benefited firsthand from it as a former student and a lifelong member of the district? It is my honor to nominate Dr. Andrea McCary for North Shore Board of Education Vice President.
Sorry, I had my mic up. We got a second over here. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Trustee Glady? Yeah, you're good.
Thank you. I can't read very well, so I don't have a prepared piece, but I want to nominate Trustee Marianne Russo for the Vice President. She is the senior member of this Board of Education and has tremendous background experience that is invaluable in terms of what she can provide to the district and what she can provide to us. Her experience as an attorney has been, we don't have anybody on the board that has her insight into a lot of the issues that we've been dealing with and issues that we are going to be dealing with in the future. So I think she provides that lens, which is so critical, particularly in a leadership position. So for that and other reasons, I nominate Marianne Russo.
Thank you, Richard. Is there a second? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Okay, so at this point, I would invite comments or questions if anyone would like to venture forth in this topic. Okay, so at this point, I will call the vote, and I'll just call it in order of the nominations. So all those in favor of electing Andrea McCary to be the Vice President of the North Shore School Board for 22-23, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Thank you. And those in favor of electing Marianne Russo, Vice President for 22-23 of the North Shore Central School District School Board, please say aye. Thank you. That's 7 votes. And I, again, appreciate everyone and all these thoughts, and we can't go wrong here. So I'm looking forward to this year. We're going to have a very, very strong year. Thank you. And we will now proceed with action 7. Oh, I'm sorry, you were swearing in. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. What we'll do is, yeah, when she goes up to, so I think what we'll do, just extreme logistics here. I think Andrea should go open-handed because you have to raise your hand and swear and do all that and sign. And then when you come back, if you and Trustee Cashman can switch spots. Okay. While we're getting our stuff together here, I want to thank my family for being here. Thanks, guys, and also enjoy the rest of your day. But the Cashmans are free to go, I'm told as well. But I also wanted to thank everyone for finding us here today. We're in a different location, and I don't know if everyone knows who all these people are who are up here. It feels very strange. Yesterday was a very strange day in the district. Seeing an email from Olivia Boazzi, from Tom Dolan, from Sarah Jones, and not having them part of the team helping to run this district is strange, but as is perhaps symbolic of the school system itself. Every year is new, and there's change, and it's a cycle. And I am really looking forward to this cycle. For those of you who don't know, we should introduce everyone. Okay, good. We have no nameplates yet. It is. Well, I want to make sure I get this right. I'm going to say Dr. Carol Smythe, who many of you know is our Assistant Director of Curriculum. Mr. Jamie Pappas is our new Assistant Superintendent for Business. And I think you all know Dr. Chris Suplionis, who's right here, who's going to be our superintendent. I will forgive everyone. I hope everyone will forgive me for getting the name wrong and calling you Olivia. And when I call you Chris, Carol, if you could just respond, that would be good. And I look forward to 22-23. It's going to be an exciting year, and change is inevitable. And without it being a statement about what's gone on before us, I will say change is always good as well. So onward. All right. And with that, Betty, thank you as always. Such good work. And we will now move on to action 7, which are district appointments. And I'm going to read them, even though we won't go through all of them, but really quickly, we'll be appointing our district clerk, our district counsel, our treasurer and deputy treasurer, our internal auditor, our internal claims auditor, our independent auditors, our asbestos designee, our Title IX compliance officers, our records access officer, records management officer, extra classroom activity fund treasurers, certificating officer for school district payroll, purchasing agents for the school district, systems administrator, bond counsel, and Section 504 Title II ADA coordinator. And the details of the who are all listed on the publicly available agenda that everyone can access through the board docs program. Yes.
Don't forget we have to swear that in.
Okay. Well,
You can't just.
yeah, we'll take the nomination, make the appointment, and then we can swear. Okay. Okay. So let's take the nomination first. Make sure it's all official. So is there a nomination on the sundry action 7 appointments?
Motion.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And a second. Thank you, Rich and Maria. Are there any questions or comments on these appointments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And with that, I think it's not bad to have a ceremonial swearing in of our clerk Debbie. Okay. And for the record, this is our district counsel, Jack Feldman, Fraser Feldman. Everyone has a role today. There's no small part, Jack. Great. Thank you, Betty. Okay. Action 8 is the designation of bank depositories for the district. Is there a motion? And I heard a second as well. Any questions or comments? I would just comment. Oh, sorry. Did you want to make a comment? Please, Mary.
I think these are essentially carryovers, right? We have no reason to change. We're happy with our bank depositories.
That is my understanding. That is correct. In going through them, my comment was going to be, I agree with that statement. However, it is certainly known that I think this is fine to state for the record that the First National Bank is potentially moving out of our area, and so they are still here, and they've always done the work appropriately and been a good partner to us. But I would say that it would be worth this board monitoring an abandonment of this community would certainly be harder to support using them going forward, in my opinion. Just a comment. I mean, full disclosure, I have an account there. I'm not against First National Bank, but we do try to keep it local. And if they're not local, that does change the terra firma.
right in peppering Jamie with questions. What is the process if we decide we want to move away from that next?
And I'm sorry, Jamie, just because this is your first meeting, we want to get the mic pointing at you with the light on. Might be too close to me, actually.
I believe at that point you could pass a resolution that you no longer use them, but you would maybe select it as another bank that, although the others on there certainly they'll be they'll in terms of your
I'm just displaying my ignorance about the process from the business end. Do you have to issue an RFP, or are you just who chooses what bank would take its place?
I think the administration would make a suggestion based on our past history, and then we would pass a resolution.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
Right. Okay. Great.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Action 9, to designate the Glen Cove Record Pilot and the Seacliff Glen Head Herald Gazette as our official newspapers for this district for the 22-23 school year. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yes.
Please.
And I promise I won't do this on every item of our 46 items. I just wanted to emphasize or clarify that being the newspaper or one of two newspapers of record means these are the two papers in which we publish any notices that we are required to publish. Right? Notices of our meetings, notices of bonds, bond openings, everything that is statutorily required to be published for the public will go into those two newspapers, both of them.
Yes. Those little. Exactly. Other questions or comments? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. And move on to action 10, which is the authorization of petty cash accounts and supervisors. Is there a motion? Thank you. Second as well. Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. I'm not going to go too wild here, but I am going to do a little bit of lumping if that's okay. So I'd like to ask for a motion on action 11, which is the establishment of the gasoline mileage allowance, action 12, which is the authorization to open bids, and action 13, which is the authorization to attend conferences. So a motion on 11, 12, and 13. Second? Thank you.
I have actually a question.
Please.
With the rising fuel oil prices, did we look at the allowance for the gasoline mileage? Did we change it this year?
We did not, and I think that's a really interesting, point to see where that's headed. Is that something potential that we will want to look at before the start of the school year if the trends continue, which they certainly could. That's a good point. I'm going to make a note of that wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. So if the administration looks at that and finds that the rate we're authorizing today is not feasible, we will use it on our next agenda. Thank you. Okay, absent any other comments, I will ask for a vote on 11, 12, and 13. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 14 and 15. The establishment. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Betty. Or Elizabeth, as I know. I'd like to take a motion on action 14 and 15, which is the establishment of tuition for non-resident students, special classes, and establishment of per diem rate for substitute teachers and nurses. Is there a motion? Thank you both. Comments? Questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action, let's see, we'll do 16 and 17 together. Motion on 16, which is the establishment of a rate for homebound tutoring, and 17, establishment of a rate for hourly workers. Motion? Thank you, Maria. Second from Trustee Cashman. Any comments or questions on 16 and 17? No.
In terms of the tuition, the payment for homebound students, is not part of the CBA already? Why do we do this separately?
This has always been a part of the reorganization agenda. It is tied to the CPA. So
I was just curious because it's contractually obligated anyways, as far as I can vote on it.
it's an interesting point. has always been a part of the reorganization agenda. I can always research why that is. But it's the point of it is tied to the contract. In fact, if we do settle a contract, we would have to amend that, for certain period.
Marion?
So I'm wondering what we're doing in terms of home instruction now that the protocols have changed for COVID, and hopefully it was a large expense last year. It was almost $800,000, but off the top of my head, 700 something. It was a tremendous expense, and given the financial stresses we're having in the changes, what are we doing about that? Have we thought about that? Is that something we need to think about at the next meeting?
Absolutely. I do want to speak to the principals about that directly. My hope is that we can go into the new year with less of a need for that, perhaps a less structured alternative, and hopefully less of a need, that new alternative matches. But our hope is to avoid having to do that. The other part of it beyond the cost is the burden that it does. Our teachers have been amazing doing it, but it's a burden. It's during the prep period, lunch period, off periods, and that takes a toll on their prep work and the preparation for the regular classes. So I think there are multiple benefits to not doing that, perhaps having a more moderate space for supporting students who are out. And our numbers, towards the end of the year, we will see what happens. We're very low for students who are out for COVID reasons. We also have huge platforms that we've built, over the last couple of years. So I think we have some good ideas, and we'll get those to you at our next meeting, or in our backups before that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. So that's 16 and 17. I would like to take, if I could, 18 by itself, which is a readoption of all policies and codes of ethics in effect. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Second. Any comments or discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. I would ask for the final two for our reorganizational meeting. Action 19, which is the appointment of Committee on Special Ed Committee members and the appointment of CSE, CPSE, and 504 chairpersons, as well as number 20, which is the resolution appointing impartial hearing officers. Is there a motion on 19 and 20 combined?
Motion.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you. Any comments or questions? Mary?
So, we always have a hard time getting parents to volunteer for these meetings, and I see some very familiar names on here, one even a former trustee. But can we add people as the year goes on? If we find ourselves short or in need of more parent committee members for the
Yeah, I don't see why not. We could add them to the
we thank
Yeah, it is not just something to walk into. This training, and it really is an important. It's important for those families and important for that process. Yes.
Is there a quick recap of what that process is for parents do they apply for membership? How do they learn what the qualifications are?
It is a great question. I think that is something I could communicate out with Chris Marino, our Director of Special Education. Really would be contact with him, and then we would lead into the process the rest of the way.
Thank you. Other comments or questions on 19 and 20? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. That brings us to our regular meeting. And we'll start with the approval of minutes from both June 9th and June 23rd. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Comments or questions on those minutes? My only comment is the 23rd was not that all of our conversations aren't confusing and dense, but this was particularly dense about the various aspects of the life agreement with the County of Nassau and the implications that will have on the district. And so, if anyone wasn't able to see that meeting in person, those minutes are a great recap of where that story is to date. And as soon as we approve, it will take a couple days. We have a long weekend, but they'll be up on the website shortly. And I certainly invite everyone who's watching this here or through the camera to check those out and to read through them. And with that, I will call for the vote. All in favor of approval of those 2 minutes? Aye. Thank you. Action 23, which is the approval of the treasurer's report for May of 2022. Is there a motion? Thank you, Maria. And a second?
Second.
Thank you both. Comments or questions? Sure, Rich.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jamie, so I don't expect an answer immediately. In looking through this, I know there's reimbursements for chaperones because certain of the events that require chaperones, the cost is borne by the families and students that are involved with the event. It just, to me, it seemed there were 2 in particular, one about ski trips and one about the Latin trip. And those trips took place several months ago. I was curious as to why the reimbursements are only coming through in May. And the other piece of it is, I think for something, I could understand the Latin trip if it's a one-shot deal. But for the ski trips, they happen at different times. The monies are collected at that time, so I don't really understand why we aren't a little bit more interested in doing them per event as opposed to grouping them all together. I mean, in terms of bookkeeping, maybe it's easier, I'm not sure. But to me, I think it's a little bit more transparent if we saw them individually.
Having just started, I don't know.
No,
but I will look into it. I don't know.
I was going to say, I do think what you said, Rich, that might be part of it with bookkeeping and stipends being paid at the end of the year for extracurriculars, but I think it's a great question. We'll look into that.
And Jamie, of course, for the record, 52 pages on this report, and $1 million of them, it's certainly okay to get back to us with the answer on something like that. We appreciate that. It's a great question, Rich. Thank you also. Other comments or questions on the treasurer's report? All right. All in favor of the approval of the report for May? Aye. Thank you. Action 24, which is the approval of budget transfers. Is there a motion? And a second? All right. Any comments or questions? All right. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Agenda item number 25, which is not an action, but is a report from our new superintendent, Dr. Zublionis. There you go. Take it away. First of many, I hope.
Well, thank you so much. It's been interesting, watching Dr. Dolan's superintendent's reports, which are just so well written and so well prepared, and do my best. But I just want to start out by saying how grateful I am for the opportunity, as I've said many a time, and so blessed to be here and to work with this very intelligent board and this amazing community. I'm very excited, and I'm happy to report that we've had 5 spectacular graduation ceremonies from our 5 schools. Our principals, administrators, faculty, and student musicians created inspiring events that focused on consistent themes that came out in the students' words and in our teachers' and administrators' words of optimism, love, kindness, and courage. We are proud of our students and grateful to work with the amazing families of North Shore. These are always really inspiring events, and I think our graduation ceremonies are depending on the school, it's called moving up or moving on. They are concerts, they are performances, they are displays of student voice. So happy that we have such a nice closure to the year. At the same time, as I've always said about North Shore, our schools are extremely busy with summer work. Professional learning and curriculum writing has already begun under the leadership of our new Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, Dr. Carol Smythe, and we are preparing for our North Shore Summer Experience program that's going to take place right here, outside in the backfield of Glenwood Landing School. Hundreds of students are involved in that program, and it's going to be running from July 11th to August 5th. We're very excited. This is our third year of the Summer Experience Program and also the third year of our Summer Academic Support Program for students in rising grades 1 through 9. And that will be focused on literacy and math. And parents have been responding to their interest in those groups. And what I think is really unique about the way we do this is since COVID, we've based the scheduling of the groups around the needs of our students and our families. A lot of students are at camp or they're in day programs or sports programs. And so we work to schedule flexibly around the needs of our students so we can best serve them. At the same time, we're also preparing for the beginning next week of our Special Education Extended School Year program and the High School Credit Recovery program, which is taking place at Seacliff School. As you might have noticed coming into Glenwood Landing today, and the fact that we're at Glenwood Landing, not at the high school, there's a tremendous amount of construction going on in the district as we begin phase 2 of our bond project. And so the central office and the Victorian House have become busy as our school administrators relocate to the work that's happening in all 5 buildings. And the Victorian has become our de facto high school and middle school main office and secondary curriculum office. So we have some space issues this summer, but we're happy it's for a good purpose. And we have, again, a lot of great work going on over the summer. We're excited for the construction progress that is taking place in our middle school. I think that's where we're going to first see the fruits of the community's investment and the district's work in our bond projects. And we're really excited to open up to some nice new work that's been completed at the middle school. Our new team at Central Office is already hard at work, and we've been preparing for today for several weeks. I welcome James Pappas and Carol Smythe to our team, and we look forward to interacting with our community this summer, and certainly as we approach the start of the school year. We've been working for several weeks together. James and I through text mostly and emails, and Carol and I through in-person interaction. She's already taken over much of the work of the curriculum office, and we're in really good hands with both of these new additions. We're also happy to announce the addition of a new middle school principal, Dr. Ryan O'Hara, who was universally revered by all of our committees. Dr. O'Hara was a member of North Shore's faculty and administrative team before he worked in Oyster Bay for several years, and now he's back. And we're happy that you'll see his appointment has been adjusted to begin on Tuesday. So Oyster Bay, I want to thank the superintendent of Oyster Bay Schools for working with us flexibly. He will overlap for a few weeks with Miss Imperial. So we have a nice smooth transition for the middle school. And I think Ryan will bring a lot to us that we value. We'll meet a lot of our needs and bring our middle school together. So congratulations, Principal O'Hara. Later on in our meeting, we will be discussing the impact of LIPA and restating some of what was discussed in our session last week, and some outstanding questions that we have. This will be one of the largest historical challenges that we have faced as a school district. Indeed, it was the Glenwood Landing LILCO plan that was the core reason for why the North Shore School District formed as a central school district in the 1950s. Nevertheless, our team is ready to face this challenge, and I hope, while for different reasons, the issues involved with the power plant can bring us together as a united community. I'm confident in that and confident at how we're going to face this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Just a personal note, I'm really looking forward to working with you. That was your pro. With that, we will now move on to our regular business, and we come up to number 27, which is an opportunity for comments from the public. So if anyone would like to come and share your thoughts on district comings and goings or thoughts, please come to the podium and share them with us. Just say your name and town of residence, and we'd like to hear your thoughts.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Happy summer. My name's Chris Wolf. I live in Glen Ed. I have 2 children. I have Ethan and Amelia that go to the school, Glenwood Landing. Congratulations to the new and re-elected board members. Lisa, congratulations. Dave, Marianne. I want to talk to you about athletics for a change. I know that the last time we had a meeting, we talked about ways that we could improve the facilities here in our district. And I know a lot's happened since then. Some of the things that have happened are, construction meetings, construction steering meetings. Mary Ann was actually nice enough to meet me at the turf and walk the high school turf with me on a Sunday at 5 o'clock in 95-degree heat. And she saw some of the problems that I see on that turf. And I can't stress to you enough, it's like a broken record, but I can't stress to you enough that the clock is really ticking with that field. And by the way, when old turf sits out in the sun, it only gets worse. So every summer that goes by, every 90-degree day that goes by, that field is becoming more and more of a problem. So I urge you guys to come up with creative or not so creative ways to get that turf field redone. Now, I know there's other things that you guys potentially want to do on that turf field or surrounding the turf. There's some problems with the track, which I recently found out about. So I know if we're going to do it, we do it once and we do it the right way. But that shouldn't be a reason not to just simply lay down a new turf field to avoid, having to have an emergency funding kind of situation where somebody actually really truly does get hurt and it's from that turf or multiple people get hurt. So, I've had multiple conversations with multiple board members, Dave, Mary Ann, Lisa, about both Lisas, sorry, about, getting this done. And as a community, and I can't speak for the entire community, but I can speak for a bulk of the athletics community. Pretty much this entire side of the room are people that are part of the North Shore Athletics Advisory Group, part of the Booster Club, and we consistently are coming to these meetings and talking to you guys. We don't know how this can get done. I mean, Dr. Z, welcome. Here's a project for you, bro. But we don't know how this can get done, but we know it needs to get done. And one step further than that, our aim, our goal is to improve the overall facilities at our district as well. And the middle school was a real sticking point in that, and the problems that the middle school had this year, especially with rain and drainage and potholes and the problems that they had. So it'd be amazing if we could, keep the money that's been earmarked for athletics with athletics, add to it, and get another turf field at the middle school, which would give the middle school kids and the district as a whole an opportunity to utilize. So those are the two big kind of hot items that are in the athletics community right now. The last thing I want to say is, so this was an interesting week. I got a bunch of phone calls and I had a lot of conversations about more hate and anger and frustration, and some lawsuits or complaints and things like that. And I don't know if that's really the right way to deal with your problems. And I think when people sue our district, they're suing all of us. At least that's how I kind of look at it. Now, nothing prevents somebody from filing a complaint or a lawsuit. That they have the right to do that. But I would just urge this board to try to find the middle with whatever people are having a problem, and kind of work with them a little bit. Give them some information. Give them some answers. Try to make them feel like they're a part of the community. Try to make them feel like you're not shutting them out. Not that you are, but maybe figure out a different way to go about it. Because maybe then that'll stop. Because to be straddled with the LIPA situation and things that we want from an athletics community and the things that our community wants to do, academically and all the other extracurriculars. I mean, I don't know how much sense this really makes right now, but I can understand and respect why someone would be frustrated when they're not given answers to questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I just want to address the track and field for a second. We did talk about in construction steering about the track near the end of the BOE July also, and that certainly would be part of any capital reserve project. but we did talk about possibly doing it separately, so we don't necessarily have to wait for the funding on the track to do the turf field. Um, it would be ideal to do the two of them together, but it's not necessarily a requirement, according to what I heard at the construction hearing. Just, because the track and the field together are a pretty big nut.
Yeah, I'll just mention, yeah, that we had a great conversation with construction steering. We had our engineers there, and I think that's all these pieces and how they fit together impacts how we get it done. So it's some really great answers, and we're going to continue to talk about both budget and possible capital reserve, how we can move forward in the project. So it's very important to us.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Okay. Oh.
Hi, Courtney Sidco from Seacliff. Thank you guys all for being here today. Happy Friday, happy July. I know that typically at every organizational meeting there's like a goal set, and last year there was a goal set for community engagement, and I think you guys did a phenomenal job, hit the mark. Everybody is super engaged now. So I was just going to give a suggestion for the coming year that our goal be quality communication and access to information. I know that a lot of people have been frustrated in various ways, which I think everybody here is aware of, but I think that there's simple things that could be done to make the communication a lot more clear. I sat in a meeting with a number of trustees and other parents about a month ago, and I quite literally read from the school's website the policy information regarding a particular policy, and to have people say, "Wow, you're like an undercover reporter," because I literally read from the school's website, that's a reflection on where the communication is right now. So if we can put focus on improving the searchability of our website, would be fantastic. Even having a search function would be fantastic. I know that board members don't attend those meetings in the capacity as a board member, and that is totally acceptable. However, if I know that information, then I know that everybody sitting on the stage knows that information. And it's an easy mention to say, yeah, I've heard that same, Eddie, I've heard the same complaint every meeting for last year. Here's how you can make change. Instead of just having everybody broken record, complain, let's give some solutions on how to get their voices heard through the correct channels and make some actual changes happen. That would be fantastic. And maybe if we can get our live streaming of the meetings accessible sooner. If you look at other districts, you can actually tune in midway through the stream, go back to the beginning of the meeting, you can see it within 2 minutes of the meeting closing. It's up and available instead of waiting an average of 10 days. That would also be great. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. The goal setting is, of course, a public and iterative process. Typically will happen at the very outset of the year, but you're absolutely right. That was one of the goals we set last year, and I'm glad to hear you think it was a success. I think it was too. Thank you. Although the goal of engagement is not something that has a start point and an end point. It's certainly an ongoing thing. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of, we spent the year trying to think about those things and trying to improve that. And I was thinking, we're always open to tangible solutions. So things like you just said, a search function on the website. I think integrating the policies into our board docs format, which is also a good way to start that library. I think those are very tangible, easy suggestions. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Other questions from the public? Comments from the public?
Hello, I'm Kate Gold from Old Brookville. I have 4 children. 2 are in district, 2 will be in district in the coming years, and we're very invested in this community, in the school district. I echo a lot of the sentiments that Chris shared about
athletics. I think you spoke very nicely about that. But the thing I wanted to talk to today is about the past election cycle for the Board of Education and the passing of the budget and just the mudslinging and the bullying that happened. And I don't know if there's anything that the board can do to try to rein things in. But we talk about having schools that have no bullying policies, and yet look at what the grown-ups are doing. And it's just not okay. It's fine for people to disagree, but to do so respectfully and to teach our children how to do the same thing. And I was just really disgusted what happened in the last election cycle, and I hope that's the worst it will ever be. But wanted to bring it up here in case there is anything that the board is able to do to put parameters. I don't know if it's around money, how much money that is spent or brought in, or I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, I don't have the answers, but just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you. We try here at this board to make it about the district business and not about the politics surrounding the district. But certainly that's something that everyone has thought about and has experienced. And obviously, without making it personal, I think it was pretty clear to the community where I fell on that spectrum, where my family unnecessarily felt on that spectrum. So I will not use this podium to go into that any further, but your comments are well placed. And I would simply say, as I said in my closing comments at Meet the Candidates night, that I think if people live a little bit more by the golden rule in general and treating people where they try to be treated and wish to be treated, and put themselves in other people's shoes a little more, I think that'll probably go a long way toward eradicating a lot of that. But as you said, this is the process. It's a legal process. People have their freedom. People have their rights. People can do these things. And I guess I'll just close by saying, as ugly and unpleasant as so much of it was, I would certainly choose that over restrictions on our freedom during the process. So if that comes with it, I wish people would take different approaches. I, for one, would not support regulating those approaches because that's a scary infringement of freedom to some degree. As ugly as that freedom sometimes can be, it's so precious. So it's probably more than I even wanted to say, but thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. Are there other comments to the public, other thoughts? All right, thank you. Thank you for being here during the day as well. Of course, thank you to all my fellow trustees as well. We'll go back to our agenda and go to action item 28, which are several personnel issues, letters A through R. Is there a motion on personnel A through R? And then we can take questions on anything people have.
Motion.
Thank you. A second? Thank you, Rich. Any comments or questions on personnel? Okay, Maria has a. I just wanted to second what Chris. I'll just second what Chris, Dr. Zuliona said about our new middle school principal, Ryan O'Hara. I'm glad to know that he could start right away. I was going to thank Oyster Bay as well. I didn't have any interaction with them, but we're glad you let us have him because there's a lot of work that goes into doing that. I want to thank Jen Imperial again for all the work she did, and that overlap can only help us. So that was one comment I had. I also wanted to question that we're approving coaches for the fall today, but I also wanted to ask the potential to revisit the potential need for additional personnel throughout the year. It's something we have still available to us as those circumstances permit beyond what we're approving today.
That's correct. Yeah, and I think the administration has some ideas on how we would like to perhaps enhance some of our programs.
Okay. Thank you. Other personnel questions? Maria?
Comment, okay?
Comment, question,
Okay.
thought?
It was just actually echoing what you just said. Dr. Z already referred to the early arrival of Dr. O'Hara as our middle school principal, and delighted and thanks to Oyster Bay for letting him come that soon. And just wanted to take the opportunity also to say thank you to Ms. Imperial for her service holding up the fort.
Thank you, Brianna. Other thoughts or comments before we take the vote? Okay. Okay, all in favor of the personnel items that are 28? Thank you. We will now take 29 and 30 together, which are a motion for the approval of the standard workday and reporting resolution and approval of the district cell phone list. Is there a motion on 29 and 30? Thank you. I heard a second as well. You got it, Betty? Good, of course. Any comments or questions on 29 or 30?
I have a question.
Sure thing, Rich.
When I was looking through the cell phone list, I noticed that Miss Imperial wasn't listed. So I think that needs to be added in.
Okay.
I didn't see her there. She was listed on the list in high school.
Yeah, I think that was, she should be on there, right? I think probably because of the transition where we were at the time, probably should go, well,
I just
yeah.
wanted to bring it up.
Thank you, trustee. Ms. Blunt.
Let me ask the clerk, do you want us to make a motion to add that to the list now, or we can... I think it's fine. So, okay, so I will make a motion now to add the name of Jen Imperial, who is, with the time of 22-23, will be the assistant principal at the high school again, to add her name and the appropriate phone number to this list. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion on just that motion of adding Jen Imperial? Okay, all in favor of adding it? Thank you. Now we'll return to any other questions or comments on, for the record, the phone list or the approval of the standard workday and reporting resolution. Okay, so I will now ask for a vote on the approval of the standard workday and reporting resolution, as well as the amended approval of the cell phone list.
You know, I actually do have one question. I'm sorry.
Not your-
On the reporting.
Yes.
On the standard workday.
Mhm.
I know your hourly employees clock in. How do we keep faculty attendance if they don't clock in? Do they?
Right, so, every unit is slightly different. They swipe once a day, and then we use an absence reporting system as well.
And then, do we look at that information, analyze it on when people are absent, how many people are absent, and because I think that really ties into the need for appropriate substitute teachers and coverage for those classes and some sort of limitation. I mean, things come up obviously people get sick, but there seems to be a high absence rate on Fridays and Mondays and around holidays, and we did have language in the CBA specifically about holidays getting permission for absences.
There is language on personal days around holidays, but I think this does tie back to the issues about quarantine and people being out. And so my hope is we have been actually looking at that more this year for all those reasons, and also because of the cost of substitutes, class coverages, and things like that. These are all budgetary pressures that we need to look at now more closely than ever. So we can aggregate that data, separate it, organize it by school, by day, by time of year, through the ESOP absence management program.
I think that would be an interesting, that data would be interesting to the Board of Education, and I think I'm going to ask the board if they would be interested in getting that data and maybe putting that on as an agenda item about absences and coverage in the class. It's not just about money. It's about students losing quality instructional time.
So Miriam, when you think about that, you want data from how long? Because the last 2 years are sort of outliers, right? So you would need some type of comparative data that went back prior to the pandemic, so you had some sense of what would be like a normal absentee rate.
Well, if we could go back 5 years, that would be ideal. I don't know if we'll be able to get that data 5 years. I do think the pandemic is, you know, put a different pressure on people being actually because of exposure and quarantining. But I don't see that as, I think that makes the situation maybe a little more, a little worse. But I think this issue was underlying prior to the pandemic, and I think you also have to look at you have to look at this also in terms of school trips. So when you have that exchange program, remember your foreign language teachers are out for 3 weeks, and those students who do not go on the foreign language exchange are sitting in a classroom with a substitute teacher, and often one not qualified. So, you know, it's an equity issue, because not only are they unable either for athletic reasons, because they can't, if there's athletes, they can't go on some of these trips because it interferes with, it conflicts with the absence policy in athletics. But also, if you have a child who family can't afford to send them on this trip, not only are they not going on the trip, they're not getting appropriate instruction. So I think it's, I mean, it's, I'm now bringing up multiple issues, but I would kind of like to look at the data and have it maybe aggregated and disaggregated in appropriate ways.
So I could suggest, just as a placeholder, we'll be there soon, very shortly, bring it up in all business, and then put it on the note for potential future agendas. Just for the public's understanding, what we do when we plan agenda setting is we go through, of course, everything the administration has to cover, contracts, etc. But we also revisit topics that were discussed in previous meetings, and then put some of them on the agenda. And we also have board leadership. Welcome, so you'll be there for every meeting. We also have a rotating third member of the board to participate also, make sure everyone sees the process, which is also important for board development as well. And so that usually goes in order. So I think we'll be there for that. So we'll all discuss, and I mean, we'll officially say it when we get to the old business, but I think it makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions on 29 and 30? Okay, so I will now ask for the vote on 20 and the amended 30. Sorry, 29 and the amended 30. Is there a motion? Sorry, we did the motion. We're going to have the vote. Let's vote.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Action 31, which is resolution to authorize the return of expended funds to the repair reserve and the general fund. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions?
I have
Please.
a couple of questions.
Yep.
The repair reserve, if you don't have a vote for authorization, you from the public, you have to reimburse the repair reserve. This to me doesn't seem to be reimbursement of the funds that were expended, but what was left over. Is this what's left over, or is this a reimbursement of what's expended? Because our project was a couple of years ago, so I'm sort of surprised to see it's only going back now. That's at least 2-3 years ago when we had that incident with the one school house.
Okay, so I would have to do some research on that, to kind of trail where what the history of that is and where that comes from.
Right. There was a storm, and there was damage to the one from the schoolhouse, and when that damage happened, it uncovered other problems. And for those of you who don't know, we used the one room schoolhouse as a classroom at high school because we did not have enough space. I don't know if that's with the decline in enrollment, whether we do, but it is traditionally used as a classroom. So it had to be repaired quickly. Don't recall whether we got voter approval on that or not. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. We have to go back. But I'm just curious about my recollection is it's a little bit of a gap. Again, I could be wrong, but I'd just like to know the timeline on that and why there's a delay. if there is a delay, why the reason for the delay in reimbursing. And with the return of the money to the general fund, I assume that that's going to be, well, one is the repair reserve, the second one is to the general fund? Is that going
Yes.
back into the general fund?
146,347.
So that is now, that's going to be part of our fund balance at the end of, well, potentially at the end of the year. Part of our available funds for the year.
Okay. Other questions on these, on the return of these unexpended funds? Great. I'll call the vote. All in favor of their approval? Aye. Thank you. Action 32, which is the approval to dispose of inventory. Is there a motion? And a second, I heard as well. Any comments or questions? Yep, please, Trustee Cashman.
One I had
Yeah,
a question.
you're good.
So I see there's 49 computers, monitors, 2 smart boards at the high school, some projectors, and I just, as I mentioned to you, Dr. Z, I was interested in why they were being disposed. I had sort of 3 questions. It was why and what the life cycle was, and then how they were going to be disposed, whether it was going to be resale or donation or just landfill. I was curious about that. And then the third piece was, will they be replaced, and how does that fit into the whole landscape of our office spaces?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Elliot Kay has done a great job of, to answer the first and the third question, has done a great job of creating a replacement schedule. He told me, just in probing him a little bit, that it's like a 5 to 7 year lifespan on these devices. What he calls end user devices, desktop computers, any mobile devices, smart boards, things like that. And then there are other forms of equipment like switches, wireless equipment infrastructure. They last longer, 8 to 10 years. So we try to get as much useful life out as possible, but then we kind of go by the timeline of the manufacturer and then replace. And we have a staggered replacement so it doesn't hit the budget too hard in any one shot. So there's a long-term plan in place. Dalia Rodriguez has done that with them as well. And I think what we are continuing to do is to work with different vendors. Right now, we're about to work with a new vendor who takes, like for a computer, they degauss, I've learned this terminology recently, the hard drive, which actually takes all the information out of it so that there's no privacy. It's a process, no privacy concerns or anything like that. And then they recycle the company. They pay per pound for some of that, for like a recycling business would. So I can get more specifics on that. Matt's in central office, and Elliot work together on that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Lisa. Oh, sorry, Maria.
I was just going to answer. That was, I think, my very first question also last year was about disposal of inventory. And much later in the year, an item that we had voted to dispose of, I think it was one of the maintenance trucks or something, had actually been sold, and the money came back in. We saw it reflected in the treasurer's report. So I could try to track that down for you too. It was interesting to see the process that actually does sometimes bring back money.
I mean, Olivia monitored those things because, of course, that was part of her job, but she certainly also seemed to like watching our tractor go up for auction, and when it was near the end of its life. So I don't know what your hobbies are, Jamie, but there you go, watching auction in the middle of yeah, exactly. You'll see. But getting top dollar for our unusable things is always a priority. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the disposal of inventory? Aye. Action 33, approval of a change order from Stalco Construction. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, and I heard a second as well. This is for the long discussed but finally happening middle school softball field. So there's some satisfaction there. That'll be done. At least the work will be done. Grass takes a long time to take, but the process has to start before it can be completed. Any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I was going to ask you, like maybe two more sentences of elaboration on that. I do know that we discussed it, but this is actually a change order, right? So there was money allocated to the softball field.
It's a change order to the scope of the work that they were doing at the middle school.
Okay.
So the scope of their work is being expanded to include that.
Okay.
So it's a change order to their
Gotcha.
original work because it's a drastic change of scope.
And part of this is covered by a grant from Assemblyman Levine.
Yes.
So we took the money, but the grant didn't cover all the work. So I think the total cost is what, $500,000? So
I think it's hopefully a little longer, but yeah.
yeah, around 5, and I think 250.
The grant was
Assemblyman
250. Yeah.
Levine, and then we're making up the balance. Great.
Yes. Because it's probably worth noting, I think that has to come through DASNY after it's finished. Is that the way it works?
Get reimbursed.
No, after. So that's a good point. Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 34 are many annual agreements. I won't read through them, but they are on your agenda, so I'm asking for a motion on 34A through K. Thank you. I heard a second as well. Let Betty decide who do that first. And any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Ready is a new contract for us. I don't recall seeing them. Did I miss them in prior years? It's a different agreement. It's their agreement. It's not our standard agreement.
And maybe it is the agreement that looks different because we have used them.
Okay, so they're checking in on Medicaid reimbursement that we're entitled to.
Correct.
And how did we select Ready? I asked you this question. I don't know if you were able to find out.
Yeah. I
Before
spoke to Chris Marino about this. He said even before he was here, we have always used.
Really?
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
recall seeing this name.
I'll do some, I can do some history on that. But he did say we can use them.
I mean, it's not a lot of money. And
Yeah.
It's tracked down, but I'm just curious how that was selected. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on these agreements? All right, all in favor? Aye. 35, only A through J, so one less. But these are various contracts that we'll be approving. Is there a motion, 35A through J?
Motion.
Thank you. And a second? Comments, discussion? Marianne?
So the Army contract. Now, this is a little bit of a thorn in my side.
This is my
So-
annual question.
We have this discussion every year, and it never gets resolved. So the Army contract, we're paying for the facility, but the track team earns money from this event and doesn't reimburse us for the use for that money that we spent on the facility. So they get to keep the money, and we don't necessarily do that. So it's basically a fundraiser that we're paying for as a district. And it's not an insignificant contract. The deposit is over $5,000. The total cost, that's only 20% of the contract. So do the math, right? Thank you. That's why you're the science teacher. So I want to know, what are we doing about this? Because we talk about it every year for at least 4 or 5 years.
I also report on a contract too. It's an invitation to meet. So there's a lot of things that are beyond the control of the school district. The one thing that really troubled me, in addition to the annual question, is an $1,800 an hour fee assessed for overage of profits with these events past specific time limitations. So it's an invitational meeting. We have other schools coming in. We don't know how many people necessarily are going to be involved. We don't know what the situation is. We could be assessed for even more money under the terms of the contract. And the way that the contract is worded, it says if we're under, well, we don't really get that money back, but they will apply it towards another meet that we have if we happen to go over. But if we were to go under the time in each of those meets, we don't get any money back. So I ask this question every single year. Mary Ann, posed it very well. We're not doing this for other sports, and I'm not looking to cut out opportunities for our students to be involved in these athletic, competitions. I'm not looking at that at all. But we have to pay to go to other invitational meets. So it's not just this, it's a compound issue. And every year we ask about it, and every year it's kind of like, well, hamada. And I've never gotten clarity in terms of what's really happening.
And it's not only the $1,800, which, I also noticed, but you have to provide the medical staff, you have to provide chaperones. All of that is very expensive under our contract, right? So now we're sending nurses, we're sending faculty members, you're sending a lot of people there, and it's up to us under this contract to make sure that there are sufficient personnel there. And again, we don't know the number of students, so how do we even know what the sufficient personnel is going to be? There are a lot of additional costs in here that we can't even quantify.
So I think I want to make sure that Chris knows, it's clear what the questions, and I think you're articulating well, knows what the questions are, and that we come out of here with some clarity on how to proceed.
Can I add one question? I'm just curious, do all our neighboring school districts do this as well? Is this just a North Shore anomaly, or I'm just curious what neighboring districts do, or if this is just us.
That's another question that I have to look into. I do know I didn't know this, that it's an event that a lot of other schools involved. I'm not sure in terms of whether that's a separate question, but are they doing the same kind of thing, right, where they're outlaying money?
I mean, I figure if you're looking up all these answers to the other questions, you can add mine
that's a great.
on to it.
What are we always talk about the comps. What are the comparable districts doing now?
I just would add a question just to elucidate something that Trustee Russo said. I mean, if this is a fundraiser, what are the specifics to the balance sheet associated? Is it able to self-fund, or there's some specifics?
Because I think to the point that was made, that is more typical, where if there was an outlay of funding and that's raised to help subsidize it back.
So if you want to go on a trip, a music trip, you have to pay, or any other trip, you have to pay for the chaperones, right? You have to pay for the nurse that goes. So I don't know, just seems to me, equity, that maybe it's not possible to cover all of it, but there should be some contribution towards it. And this was really part of the audit of the extracurricular activities that we have now done twice with two different auditors, and I still don't have an answer on. And it's disturbing to me that we ask this question every year and we don't have a resolution on it.
The equivalent for music would be if we paid for the Tilly Center for the kids to have the experience of performing at the Tilly Center, but then they raised money through that and didn't reimburse it.
So the only issue is they're raising money at the event, right? So there's no way to know how much money will be raised.
Well, but there are also fees.
Fees.
There are fees involved to participate, so they do know that up front.
Each team pays a fee to show up at the meeting.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, got it.
We're sponsored.
I got it.
Yeah, and the other piece of it too is, again, it comes down to equity, because we're doing this for for a group of our students. And again, I'm all in favor of giving them opportunities. I think it's great. But then it sort of opens the door. Well, why isn't lacrosse team doing this? And why isn't, the volleyball team doing this? Because there are lots and lots of invitation tournaments all over the place. So then it becomes an issue of equity.
Again, there's questions and we'll get you some answers.
Okay. Other comments or thoughts on the approval of this?
Sorry to be a pest.
No.
The contract with Deborah Caputo, we did speak about this, but I just would like you to explain it to the public. Explain it to me, but I think it's public should know.
Sure. So this is the third year we have had what's called youth mental health first aid training. During the pandemic, we started this, and it really is training for teachers, non-practitioners, to identify in students signs or symptoms where they can point students or parents in the right direction. It's doesn't teach them therapy or any other kind of advanced technique as a layperson in that field, but gives them tools to help identify and support students if they say something to them that would be causing them concern, giving them direction on how to process some of those needs that have been arising more. For the last 2 years, and the reason it hasn't been on our reorg is because it was funded through a grant through Ms. Caputo. This year, that grant did not exist, but it is a part of our professional learning workshop series this summer.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. I don't know whether to pay attention to that. But
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
There's security personnel who are
right. I saw them
here
go
for us.
and look. Just a small follow-up on Caputo, and I have a couple of others. But so the training is for people who are in close contact, who are lay people, not professional mental health providers.
That's
Like
correct.
faculty obviously fit into that category. Would it also be available to people in main offices, for instance, or I'm just curious if other people who interact with the students, even lunch monitors?
It's a great question that has come up with other things, even like technology training. I know the way the summer workshop series works is really always been for teachers and TAs. Over the last couple of years, again, I keep saying since COVID, but that has brought up some needs, and for teacher aides, paras, for example, they can help us more about some of these trainings. And I think your question kind of fits in there. So I think there's a bigger answer to that, and that is trying to open up trainings to our faculty trainings, to our full faculty and staff, looking at them as one, they all interface with our students, and how we can provide that. So right now it's just for teachers and TAs, but we will look into run professional learning for everyone.
So I actually know quite a bit about this. I've published an article that sort of discussed mental health first aid in the past, and the idea is the gatekeeper training. So the idea of opening it up to all employees in an organization is really what you want to do, from the custodial staff, the lunch staff, because mental health first aid is an evidence-based treatment, and the more people that you train, they go home to their families where they're also able to identify mental health issues in their families, in their communities, and other aspects of their life. So the goal of mental health first aid is really to disseminate it to as many people as possible in the country. It's a very inexpensive but evidence-based gatekeeping training program. So it's not like a little thing that we just happen to do. It's really a big program in the country.
I just wanted to say, because I think it is akin to first aid training that you do if you were coaching or in EMS or something, working in other fields. You're not being asked to look for these things actively. It really is how to respond appropriately when they come to you. So I think that's important, an important distinction. And I've sat through the training myself. I'll just say it is very helpful in how you respond when this is youth mental health first aid training, but also they do have it for adults for community mental health first aid training. How do you respond when people are saying things that you might not otherwise have the training to know what to do or to send them?
The government has actually, over the years, put tens of millions of dollars out to disseminate the program. So it's a very good program.
It sounds it.
Yeah.
May I ask that two other items?
Yeah, but let me just make a one sentence comment on that. Chris, your point about viewing everyone who works in this system on an equal playing field with regard to the degree which they interact with our kids is just something I wanted to highlight. It's so well taken. We recently had a situation with a health situation at the middle school, and the response of people with all different job titles as people who were able to handle that with such aplomb was a testament to the way we want this district to be and performing under a difficult circumstance at their highest level. And so the more we do that, the more we're not the kind of organization that says, oh, you're Glenwood Landing, so you don't need to know anything that goes on in Glen Head, or you're a teacher, so you don't need to know that. No, it's important that everyone is part of the North Shore family, and of course treated with the same respect, but also treated with the same, given the same tools in this area and others to be able to perform at the level that we have been so lucky to have performed.
And I'll just take it one step further. Sometimes people don't have access to these programs, or the people who need it most, because they don't have access to mental health care at the same level as somebody who's a full-time employee who has an excellent health insurance program. So really, from a workplace wellness perspective, the idea of training everybody throughout the organization, and it doesn't even have to be the youth version of this program. You can possible, and I think we've talked about this in wellness committee. Lots of organizations do mental health first training so that supervisors and managers can recognize it in their department, in their employees. So,
It's well said. Maria, I'm sure that cut you off, but if I did, I apologize. So
No,
please.
that was extremely valuable. I had a question about two other items. Although I do want to add my voice to the armory questions. I had them on my list as well, and I think that's appropriate. Item 35C. I was just curious. The construction program solutions, Stuart Schiller. I'm just trying to understand. I know John Hall isn't here today, but I'm reading this, and I'm just trying to make the connection. Is this a consultant who is sort of available for for impartial advice across the board for the many things that we have to juggle, sort of akin to an investment fiduciary, somebody who has no personal interest?
He is an independent estimator for our construction
And he's actually
projects.
the estimator.
Cost
Okay.
estimator.
That's what I didn't get.
Yes.
So
And he's
when we're doing any project, whether it be just a regular project that's in the budget, we're planning to put in the budget, or a capital reserve project, or a bond, Stu will estimate the cost of the work and put in the escalations that go with it and all the contingencies. So in addition to our architects giving us a number, we have Stu, and they often collaborate together.
Okay. Great.
Just
Sounds
another
like
layer.
something I'd really like to have in my own home.
Send my husband out there.
Okay, and then I just a simple question. I wasn't quite clear on what in item D. What is debt book? What exactly does that provide? I see that it says it provides GISB 87 compliance services. Can you get a quick definition of that?
This year, and they've been talking about it for a while, and they kept postponing it, but there's the new accounting, has the accounting principle that's changing the reporting with regard to leases. So Jetbook is a company that organizes and will provide the information for the financial statements as well as the notes. So it's a new GASB pronouncement that's being implemented this year.
Got it.
And
So Jamie, is this software that your office will be using, or is this sort of it's a contracted third-party service?
It is, there is a software piece to it, but I think they ultimately put it all together and make the information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Good questions. Any other questions on these contracts? Okay, thank you again. All in favor of approval of 35A through J? Oh, I'm sorry, Rich.
I was wondering if we could move to table 35A until we get more information.
Okay, so that's you want to make the motion to table 35A? As a second, other questions or comments? My question will be, of course, do we know the impact on those events?
The only question that I would need to ask to answer that is in terms of like the reservation of the facility, which I'm not sure, right now. I know the events take place in December, and so I don't know if the reserving of the facility or the pop. We'll have another meeting in August.
Would it be possible to amend A to allow to approve just the deposit, which is about $5,000?
Well, that would be the event cancellation. So we would,
Okay.
the deposit is
I'm not
non-refundable.
suggesting. I don't,
Yeah.
and I don't think Rich is suggesting that this is an event that would get in the way. More procedurally, we look at the logistics of the financing.
I'd like to just want to work to make it more comfortable. Because basically, this is what happens every year. And then we just don't get a lot of follow-up on it for lots of reasons. And again, I ask it every year, and I needed to be more aggressive about follow-up too. And it just sort of, you forget about it, and then it's here again. So that's why I was like, if possible, it's not to have a severe negative impact. I'd like to hold off.
We'll work to get those answers as quickly as possible so that we can be ready.
Okay. So we're discussing the motion to table 35A. Is there any comments or questions on that?
Well, I'm just trying to understand. We do think there's a risk that we could lose these dates. We could lose the ability to reserve these dates if it takes us another 6 weeks to approve.
I don't know. That's the one question I have. That we could get that meeting.
Yeah, without knowing that, I would be, I'd be nervous to do that. So I'm probably going to not be able to support the motion. Jamie?
Are we sure that because I had looked into this a number of years ago, and I want to say vaguely remember, but payments being made to the armory from the extra classroom activities. So are we sure that none of these payments were ever made through that we may be approving the contract, but that they weren't making the payments?
They didn't make the payment.
Okay.
They've never made the payments. We've always made the payment.
I don't know.
And
I
Rich
don't-
is
I
right.
don't
We
know
bring
the
it up
answer.
every year, and is it possible to hold a separate vote on this after we get the information in between the meetings? You could have
Theoretically, you could have a quorum of
4 people there one morning. Well, if we approve the contract, then we have to send a check.
Jamie will develop the art of the cash flow.
I will definitely look into it immediately so that we can come up with an answer sooner rather than later.
So if we table it, and then you can also ask the question about, is there any issue? Because really, we were going to vote on this on July 13th or 14th,
Yeah.
when we're going to have our original meeting.
Yeah.
So if we hold off on it until next week or the week after, you're still in the same timeline as our meeting was originally scheduled. So I can't imagine that between now and July 14th that there's any downside to tabling this contract.
Yeah, as long as we won't lose the dates, that's fine. For me, just adding my 2 cents, I think I'm probably in agreement with others. I'm not going to speak for anybody. I do want the children to be able to have this experience. It's just a question of whether we need to review and tighten up or even amend the funding trail.
And I want to add, since we did that, I found that convincing. We were on a different timeline before, so it feels like it should not put us at undue risk. I do think the questions are very important, but we must personally each make it a priority to try to gather, because we must do so in person. We can't make this a Zoom. At least 4 of us, right? We can't make this a Zoom meeting anymore, and some of us are not going to be in the country. So I just want to make sure that all the trustees understand we have to make that commitment if we're not excluding.
I'm here until the 13th, and I'm only away for a couple of days.
And it's a 10-minute meeting.
Yes, so under those circumstances, I am comfortable tabling the board to making sure this happens, but that additional assurances and or clarification must be required. So are there any other questions on the motion to table?
I'm trying to think through every possible. I guess there's probably no chance that you can't get answers in a reasonable amount of time. I guess I'm just trying to think, the clock is ticking. It's July 14th. We haven't done anything.
I would think,
It's pretty simple stuff, right?
If it's not straightforward, that's an answer. But
okay.
yes. Okay. Good. So I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion to table 35A, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 7.
Someone just texted me that the sound quality is not good today. I don't know if it's the different facility. So maybe if we could all make an effort to speak up.
Yeah, Jamie, you're close. It bends and all. There you go. Thank you. Okay, so we now have 35B through J. And I think I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of 35B through J?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. 36, which is an action item approving intermunicipal agreements with 4 different local districts. Is there a motion? And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. 37 and 38, the award of bids and the award of purchase contracts, several of them. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. I hear a second. Comments?
I'm sorry. I have a question.
Sure.
37B.
Northwest Nassau
The Northwest
Cooperative.
Nassau Cooperative. This is just. Sorry, I feel like I should know this, but why is this not a situation where we can use our own buses?
I believe these are for longer distances.
Longer distances and private schools. And then there are rules that govern how you have to do this. This allows us actually to find efficiency in transportation private schools. I actually had a conversation with Olivia about this at one point or another.
Okay, great.
Okay, other comments or questions? All in favor, 37 and 38? Aye. Thank you.
Also, just on that last one from Maria, what Olivia has told us in the past is that if we send a lot of kids over to maybe Blue High and Chaminade, so we have enough people that it pays to put one. But let's say an example would be the Waldorf school. We only have 1 or 2 children once in a while, so it doesn't pay for us to run one of our buses because why it pays.
How did you know that would be a perfect example for me?
10 years.
We'll take action 39, 40, and 41 together, which are the special ed consultant agreements, and there are A through N as in Nancy of them. Approval of special education tuition agreements, and then the individual IEPs. Is there a motion on 39, 40, and 41?
Motion.
And I heard a second. Comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I still left the like one. I will call the vote. 39, 40, and 41. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Action 42, which is an approval of a memorandum of agreement with our custodial unit. Is there a motion? Motion. And a a second? Thank you. Comments or questions? I would just say I'm glad. Yeah, this is good news. I'm glad this is resolved. They do a tremendous effort for our district. And we're very glad to be able to vote on this. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And action 43, which is approval of a memorandum of understanding between the teachers' assistants of the district. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
I think I'm going to abstain. I haven't had a chance to review any of those documents at all.
Okay, no problem. We'll just start with all those in favor. That's 6 of us in favor. We're all in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have 1 abstention. I think that gives us to 7. Thank you, everyone. Number 44. The best for last, for the big one, for the end. Which is an approval of a settlement agreement between the North Shore Central School District and LIPA. Is there a motion? Motion. And a second?
Second.
Okay. Comments or questions on this? Chris, do you want to say something? You want me to say something? So this, as you referred to in your opening superintendent's report, this is but one chapter in a very long saga. We are not at the end. We're certainly not at the beginning. But this is a specific agreement that is going to be entered into between the North Shore Central School District and the Long Island Power Authority regarding a resolution of our third-party beneficiary suit. And it will certainly help the district, and that there is a financial aspect to this, but no one should be under the impression this is going to solve all of our problems. But it is something that we, as a board, believe is the right course of action to go forward, and is something that has been hard fought. I do think we should acknowledge Ingerman Smith, particularly Carrie Ann Tondo, who's been a tremendous advocate for the district throughout this process. And although this is not the end of the overall saga, it is certainly the end of this particular section, it's folio, so to speak. So it is a momentous moment for the district. And I think it's going to be part of a larger conversation. I know that we, as a board, at our last meeting, had asked the administration to schedule a separate meeting during the summer to be able to discuss and really have a lot of members in the community be here, so we can go through some decisions that have to be made. But this deal is somewhat separate from that. This deal is discrete. This deal is just about our agreement. This deal was is a negotiated settlement to end that third-party beneficiary lawsuit, but is not certainly an answer to all the questions that we do have. And we had I thought a very productive conversation at our June 23rd meeting, which is why I exhort everyone to look at those minutes, and we'll discuss it further, not requiring everyone to go back and read. But there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered, and this is truly a unique circumstance. Maybe Island Park's in a similar situation, but we have a lot of questions that need to be answered within a limited time frame. So we are working with our professionals that we have hired to assist us to get access to the people who are going to be making those decisions. And so far, although we don't have the answers, we are able to get in the door in the right way to be able to get the answers to those questions. And I'm certainly optimistic we'll be able to get those answers, be able to have a appropriately transparent public conversation with the public's viewing, to be able to move forward for this district. I don't know any more nuts and bolts of it other than the logistics of the changes in the way that LIPA will be remitting payments to the North Shore School District are changing. And the movement from taxes to pilots, or something called the direct payment, the timing of those things, the legality of those things, are all things that are going to very directly impact the levy that we have on this community, the voter-approved levy. And we need to make sure that, of course, we don't overtax the community, but we don't leave our district short. And it's not a result of changes we're making. It's a result of very logistical changes that the county is considering in the way that they remunerate those payments to us that could have direct implications in a very short time frame. Is that word salad or did that kind of? Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments from my fellow trustees? All right. Again, Pete, just as a leader of this board last year when this was going on, this has been a really collaborative process. I really appreciate everyone's research on this. As was said earlier, we only have one actual attorney on the board, but we've all climbed somewhere further along the legal understanding path. Yeah.
Actually, you might have just one brief
Yeah,
question
please.
/ comment, which is, I think what you just said was completely accurate, but it leaves room for a misunderstanding about maybe where we are in the process and the implications of what this deal means in terms of closure of a certain portion of these discussions. So maybe you could speak a little more to that.
Absolutely. And let me see if I get. I'll ask you to tell me if I did okay. So taking a few steps back, LIPA challenged the taxes on their plants with the County of Nassau. The County of Nassau is the taxing authority. We just tell them what our levy is, and they collect it. And it's up to them and their assessor's office to determine, the Office of Base Proportions, the Office of Real Property, I should say, to discuss and figure out how they're going to get that money to us. But this community approved approximately a $94 million tax levy. That is going to be paid to us by the County of Nassau. Because of the lawsuit between LIPA and the county and their back taxes, they have reached a separate deal. That separate deal is going to result in the diminution of the payments. I'm not saying tax payments because they're, regardless of what you're calling them, let's just call it, for lack of a better term, the cash, the money that they're going to be paying the district over a path that has been publicized but is not to the tune of about $2.7 million the first year, I think 1.7 after that, I think 2.4 in the third year, and then slower amounts. It's about approximately $8 million over the 5-year path. They used to call it a glide path, but it's pretty darn steep. That is happening. That has nothing to do with this deal. We did not have a seat at the table in that deal because we are not the taxing authority. And so through the efforts of past boards, we were able to get some leverage by filing a third-party beneficiary suit. That has been bandied about in the courts and discussions and has had precedent in other LIPA decommissionings around Long Island. But at this point, if you remember a few months ago, I testified before the legislature of the county saying that in return, as they were nearing the end of their deal, we as a board determined and agreed, and are now officially going to agree in, I believe, a matter of moments, that we felt it was time to give up that third-party beneficiary suit, which had gotten us not a seat at the original table, but had gotten us some leverage in this overall discussion. We decided to abandon that in return for money. And so that's the deal that we are approving today. So whatever's happening between the county and LIPA and the diminution of their contribution to our school system is happening. This is a separate deal that we are about to vote to enter into, which will end that third-party beneficiary suit, and in exchange for additional payments to the district from LIPA, but it will not affect the larger deal. Now, it should be stated that the larger deal could have an effect on our deal, but that's a separate issue.
And so,
Click. Oh, sorry, click. Yep, there you go.
thanks, sorry. So where it stands today is I think we can't repeat this enough. I'm sorry if I'm belaboring
Not
it.
at all.
But where it stands today is we stand to lose over 5 years around
Let's call it $8
million, and we settled for over 3 years to collect, if all things go as planned in this, what we're about to agree to, about
3.25.
3.25.
Right.
Now it should be
So
said.
we're $5 million short.
Well,
I just feel like
Well,
that
depending
is
on-
a point for the community to really truly
well, let me just clarify
understand.
that it's not just $8 million because you lose $2.7 million in year one. Year two, you don't just lose 1.7.
And year one is this academic
22,
year
20,
that we have
20,
already have an
23.
approved budget for. So
Yeah,
there's a
year-
shortfall in this existing budget of
The shortfall in this existing budget is $2.7
Yeah.
million. The year two, I said 1.7, and again, this is in my head, but it's close. We're not just losing 1.7; we're losing the 2.7 is already gone.
Right. And the
Now we're
1.7.
1.7 more. The third year, it's 2.7, the 1.7 in the second year, and then the 2.4 ish in the third year, all against a single payment or a lump payment delivered in multiple parts of $3.25 million. So this is not an expression, but I would just say I'll coin it. 3.25 is better than 3.24, but not as good as 3.26 or every other number beyond that. But this is the essence of negotiations, and it was not a single meeting. It is a process, and it is not appropriate for us to talk about the details of those negotiations, nor would it ever be. But the question before the board today in approving this is, do we feel that this is the right decision for this community, given all the circumstances that are out there? But I don't think this can be clarified enough. It is confusing, and it is very impactful. And as much as we go through that, I mean, Lisa, you obviously went pretty well versed in this, right? You've talked about it for a long time. But it is confusing, the different suits. The fact that, our taxes, we're not responsible for our own taxes. We just tell someone else to do it.
And I think the stop-start of it all and the different scenarios that people have had to learn along the way leaves some confusion. And so I think we can't repeat enough where we stand today, what the status is today, because there's a shift for some people. Not everybody goes to every meeting, and there are people watching. So I appreciate you indulging.
This is not a, this is going to be the number one conversation that we are going to be having. I from this day is going forward. Obviously, concomitant with that discussion is preservation of our district, the preservation of both our values in terms of who we are as individuals and as an institution, but also our values in terms of our property values and the values of our schools, and that's all part of that conversation. But that is the big thing facing us. This is a large issue. There are certainly ongoing discussions. This is not something that we're like, oh wow, where did this come from? Like there are things in effect, but it's very, we have to be very careful with these things. For example, as we discussed at our June 23rd meeting, nothing had actually happened because the agreement hadn't been approved between Nassau County and LIPA. So we can't act upon reports. We have to act upon actual legality. And legality, as we all know, can change, right? Different things. I mean, I'm not going to give this example, but let's just say that in our world the last couple of weeks that certain things that have been established as law are no longer law, and the world changes. And so, but meanwhile, our kids are going to school September 1 or August 31st or whatever it is this year, and we need to make sure that they have what they need and that we give them what they need to be able to get as much as they can out of this North Shore experience. The same way, and again, just with divided my kids, they were in this building as little kiddies on this stage, and now they're all big and they're not so little. But we owe it to every one of the 2,600 students to be able to give them what my kids had when they were little, what Marianne and Rich's kids had when they were little, and what those of you who have little ones now. That's why we're up here. That's what we're doing. But it's not just us deciding that. It's with the community. So that communication, it was certainly heartening to hear that we did a good enough job last year at engaging the community. But there's a lot to be done. And these summer meetings, when people aren't necessarily set up for things, are when we're going to have to make this decision. Because the next, I think it's worth saying, the next big threshold is the official adoption of the tax levy. And I think what I should just say for that is the community voted on the tax levy, 94 million plus. We certainly can't go beyond that, but we have the ability to reduce it in a way that we may have to do if the payments from LIPA come in the form outside of the tax levy. I'm probably getting more confusing with that. So let me just say that as I'll repeat what was said at the last meeting, we have estimated that even though the budget is overall $115 million, we believe that 94 million of that has to come in tax revenue. Now, if it comes in tax, if instead of 94 million, let's just say for argument's sake, it came $93 million in tax revenue and $1 million in some other form, there's a cash briefcase, that seems weird. But let's say, a direct payment of some sort, that would still be the 94 million we get from that piece. And I say that because revenue comes in other forms. We have state aid, we have these little revenue pieces that we discussed, like transportation. But overall, the big piece is that $94 million in taxes. If LIPA's portion of that tax bill is going to be reduced because they're paying it to us in a different form, that's okay. We're still getting the money, but we need to be careful in the way that we set that tax levy so we don't leave ourselves short or end up collecting the full tax revenue and then getting the money from LIPA on the side as well, because that would result in unnecessarily overfunding things in a way that we wouldn't even intend to, but could be a mess.
So I think it's important to point out that the stipulation hasn't been executed yet. That's why it's, it's a little vague as to what we're talking about. It also has some provisions in it. But the money that we're losing is going to compound because every year, and we are not getting an offset ad infinitum. It will also impact us in terms of the calculation of the 2% tax cap, because if it's coming in the form of a direct payment or a pilot, it's calculated differently than it is if it's on the tax roll. So this is today is just about getting the stipulation done, but the conversation about how that all plays out, as Dave said, is going to be an ongoing conversation because it's just not finite numbers.
That's really well said. I just want to say that thank you. I'm going through this and I'm talking, but it's helpful to have other trustee voices on this to help make this clear and discuss it in a different way. That I only have my own way of doing it, but that was very clarifying.
And yeah, I'm just going to add that it's enormously complicated, right? And how we use the money, calculating our tax levy 1 year will intimately affect what our tax levy can be the following year. As Jamie knows well, it's intimidating. I did want to just add, though, in terms of anybody who is so inclined, to actually study up on this in preparation for the August meeting, we could, urge the review of the 623 minutes, but also go back a little bit farther. I don't remember the exact date, but within recent memory, Dr. Dolan gave us quite a good slide presentation that talked about that cumulative effect over the next X number of years that really, really adds up and is important to have as back.
It was one of our main meetings before the budget vote.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say what Trustee Russo said. Because I think we have these immediate issues that you're talking about right now, and then we have the levy issues, the issue of clarity, and then we have long-term strategic issues about cost reduction, and how do we preserve what the board and the community built over a long period of time. So it's three different conversations, and that clarity conversation first is what Carol Jamie and I have been talking a lot about.
And just from the board's perspective, to request officially from the administration, yes, we want everyone to read the minutes. Yes, we want people to watch the videos, but we also need to push information out heavily so people know this is happening. Because here we are, boards have been planning on this for 10 years, at least, and now here we are, and that is a challenge. That is what we're all. I will say this with every degree of emphasis that I can. This board is up to the challenge. The 7 of us are going to be able to figure this out with the administration. That doesn't mean that it's a snap. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean the choices won't be to be worked through.
To that point, I wonder if there could be, in your communications, Dr. Z, like every single time at every building level and building leadership, just terms that we share with the community about what are the different vernaculars that we're using, and really just beyond the specifics of this case, just use every opportunity that we're connecting with parents to really define the features of this deal and the future. And because there's so many moving parts, and people, even who are close to this, it gets confusing. The difference between the tax levy and the, I can't articulate all the things sitting here, but it's just an idea that popped in my head as to just really not missing a chance to talk about it.
But you raise a good point, right? It's so complex, and how do you take complex concepts and simplify them, right? And I think to some extent we're a little guilty about like presenting all the information at once, where maybe we're better off doing like one question, one answer in the newspaper each week that's specific to something, so that it builds on itself over time. Because it can be sort of overwhelming for a community member who's not reading all this and not living this and marinating in it to grasp all of it at once. So that might be another way. I think at some point we did do like a Q&A. I don't remember what superintendent did it, but like
Peter Juriza.
Yeah, I think.
He did a Q&A on LIPA, but they're going to know what the impact is when they get their tax bill in October. Might be a good idea to have a conversation in October about the shifting of the base proportions and why the tax bill may not match up with the approved voter increase.
Right. In psychology, you call it the inoculation effect. You got to tell them before that bill comes. And I think you also have to tell them that it's not just related to LIPA, that there are other issues that are going on in the county that are going to result in higher taxes. And so while this is part of it, it's not the entire story.
Yeah. October, September, August, multiple times. I think for everyone who wants to engage in this conversation, that's going to be better by having more. But also to Trustee Russo's words, today what we're about to do is that one finite piece, which is just approving this deal that will give us some assistance, $3.25 million worth of assistance, to be able to deal with the mammoth challenge ahead. So with that, I think I will call the vote on this settlement agreement. All those in favor of Action 44, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. 7-0. Thank you. That is our last action item, and I will now open it up to old business. Miriam?
So just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I have two pieces of old business, and one I don't know where it falls. I think new business, and one that's definitely new business. But the data for the absence policy and the absentee rate in the different buildings and the different classrooms. I wanted to put it out there to the board to get that information, gather the information to the best that we can. We don't know how far back we'll be able to go, but you can do what you can do. And do we want to put that on as a future agenda item?
I'd just like to add to that it's not just about collecting the numbers, it's really looking at the numbers and trying to figure out what is going on systematically, right? At the system level that's causing, if there is high absenteeism, is it burnout? Is it childcare issues? Is it COVID related? That I don't want to come in and just start condemning people for taking absences, because there might be real reasons why people have been absent. And if it's at the organizational, if we see some pattern, right, I think then we as a district need to look at what are those solutions.
I don't think I was talking about condemning people, Andrea. No, but your statement sort of implies that. No, when we were first talking about it, I was looking at it to see what the absentee rate is to go for possible solutions and what the impact is, where that where the absenteeism is, how does it impact learning, how can we address it in a better manner. It's not just to, point fingers at people.
No, I
You don't
agree.
know.
So I'm sorry if you thought I was talking to you. I just recently have been doing a side project looking at employee absenteeism, and there's just so many underlying things that happen in an organization that can produce absenteeism that you wouldn't even think of. So that was just my comment. It had nothing
No,
to do
but
with
I
it.
didn't want the public to think that's why I was looking at it, because we had a whole discussion earlier. I just didn't go back into it now. It's not just to get the data. It's to get the data and what the implications of the data are, and then talk about solutions to those implications.
So maybe that's the first part of this conversation, is that the board can, because it is a substantial amount of work, the board could approve this is good data to collect and then report back to the board. And then when we have the information, it is certainly possible that we don't have an absentee problem. In this case, that's
Right, that's what I said too also in the beginning.
Exactly. So you got to get the data first to know what's going on. So why don't we get the data together, and then I think revisit that in a future old business and see where it is. And then at that point, we can then specify what we'd like to see as the follow up to the data, as you were saying, to get the information to follow up, as to understand better why it's happening if it is, and then have a larger discussion about it. Does that work? Okay.
So my second piece of old business is board committee. So I sort of thought we did board committees at this meeting, but I must be confusing my meetings. We do it at the August meeting, but Trustee Mosca had talked about maybe getting LAC off a little earlier. We had some discussions about that. I don't know if we end up meeting again because of the tax levy situation. Do we want to talk about, or at least have preliminary discussions on board committees at that time? Does anyone think it would be helpful? Because I know you expressed that concern.
Yeah, this is actually, thank you for speaking for me. I mean, it was in my mind for old business stuff. I don't know.
I'm sure they feel the appropriate way to say this, which is essentially like, if Maria's going to do a LAC next year again, if you'll take it on. I'd be happy to have that as a discussion, but if they want to do it too. It's also the only committee we have that only has one person on it, so I think that should be accelerated. We need to wait until the end of August.
But I think the question also is about getting replacement members,
Right.
getting the membership process going as early as we possibly
Right.
can.
Yes.
And I know there were some logistical issues with that. I didn't feel like we ever came to it.
Well, that I think is separate than the question of who's the liaison.
Was that your question? Was about who's the
It's
liaison?
it's all of it. It's how we structure committees. It's because we talked about maybe making some people officially. You could also have more than one board trustee if you feel that you need assistance, because generally it's one liaison and the vice president of the board goes to LAC. It's the vice president or the president. It's someone.
Yeah.
But you could have up to 3 people. So if someone else had an interest in it or thought they would be of further assistance. So if we don't get new committee members right away, maybe some work could be done preliminarily if there's more than one trustee involved. We have questions about, we added a lot of new committees, the budget committee, the athletic advisory committee is being resurrected, and it seems to be taking a little bit of a different course than policy. It seems to be getting tied in with construction now on projects, how the committees are composed. I mean, I just think there's a lot to talk about with committees other than who's going to do what. For instance, I was looking at a website for another school district the other day, and the athletic director is on the construction steering committee. Like, I mean, which if you're going to be doing a lot of athletic projects, kind of makes sense, right? So I don't know if we want to have a larger discussion than, okay, Marianne's doing construction steering, Lisa's doing LAC, you know, you might want to, how we're going to compose it. There was some discussion about people coming in and out of the committee. Or do we want to have, you know, this, I just think, I don't want to have a whole discussion now because that's not the point of this. But I think we could have a much broader discussion about committees. Do we want to leave that for the 25th? If we have another meeting, do we want to have some preliminary discussions about it and then revisit it on the 25th?
So
I don't know how the board feels.
So we're talking
that.
about having an interim meeting between now and the 25th to discuss LIPA and the tax levy. And I think, well, I don't know if we have a date for that yet, but let's say we're going to have a date. And it's between now and the 25th of August. I think, pardon me?
Now on the 15th of August.
Oh, it's the 15th of August?
To be before the 15th.
Oh, you're right. Correct. That's exactly right. So there's that meeting. The question is, we could certainly use it as an opportunity to do other district business. The Armory didn't matter until then. We could do that, and there's other things we could do. But I wanted to also, Chris, not putting you on the spot, we've had some conversations about committees in general. Because some of our committees have very clear bylaws and very clear direction, and some of them don't. And I think that is something that could use more clarity so we know what and who we're doing. Not we don't know what we're doing, but so we get to those committees, there's something inscribed somewhere that we can understand what it is that is going on. And if, for whatever reason, we get off track in those meetings, there's something to which we can appeal. So you had some thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I did a little historical work. Ms. Campy helped me about, when committees arose and whether they are board committees or ad hoc committees, which are the two kind of groups of committees that policy defines, our policy defines. To further complicate it, as you mentioned, we've had this proliferation of committees since, certainly since COVID, but certainly since the strategic plan in 2018. And so there was, membership has been fluid. Things as basic as, are people a member of a committee for a certain amount of years? Can people join at any point? Some of those questions and the structures that you see in instruction steering, LAC, and committees like that, we might not see in some of those other committees. So we've talked about it internally. I know it has come up publicly about two, with some greater definition and structure would be very helpful. So I think, I see this as another step towards that, and I can certainly prepare back up to that.
It just might be helpful to have that discussion prior to August 25th, when we're going to be talking about when to send out the flyers, when to get people in, who's going to be the liaison. It might be helpful to define. I mean, maybe we want to do some committees. I'm just throwing this name out. It doesn't mean it could be athletic, it could be wellness, whatever. Maybe you want to have a representative on those committees, a parent rep from every building. So you make sure, because the concern maybe for wellness or safety or for athletics is different if you have a third grader than if you have a 10th grader. And I feel like sometimes our discussions sort of center just on like the high school and sometimes the middle school, right? Because especially athletics, that's your varsity sports, right? But there are concerns that go down to the elementary level, right? So maybe we want to structure some of those. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but I think it's a bigger conversation.
To cultivate engagement by families and parents at an earlier age is only good. Yes. So you'll put together something for that mid-meeting, and we'll have a discussion about it. Yeah, that sounds good. Just this is an incredibly small bit of old business, so that I wanted to put in here, or maybe the new business, we'll throw it in there. And it's small, so I apologize to everyone. But I'd like to introduce just one new committee, with some kind of goodwill committee or something. When the board gets together and does things like, give out gifts or recognitions and flowers and things, or events, good and bad. My apologies, but not only is it really not my personal skill to do those things, but it's a lot for the board president to kind of organize those things too.
I don't mind doing it. I enjoy doing these things.
Okay.
I don't know if you need to formalize it, but I'm happy.
As long
to
as this,
take
I
that.
just think going forward, the board should appoint someone who's the
Okay.
goodwill chair, and that should be that person's point person.
Okay.
Because I'm terrible at it. Okay, thank you. Not that I don't love what we do and appreciate everything. I mean, I'm certainly would. I appreciate what you do.
You're not a shopper.
I'm not
Shopping is a
sure.
sport day.
Yes.
If you've ever been to the semi-annual sale
I
at
am not a
Nordstrom, you would
shopper.
know that.
Thank you. I don't
Or a
know.
Macy's one-day sale.
No, thank you. Okay. Other old business.
I think I have something that's all business. It's just a quick question. Since we're discussing sort of agendas, we talked about the agenda setting schedule. Can you send that out at some point, Dr. D, so that third floating member, you know what we're due?
Betty
does that.
Sorry.
Is the agenda setting rotating third member.
And when,
Thank you.
when you forget your,
I
I know.
lost
She's-
my sense of the timing.
Those oh my gosh. No, I don't have Betty as like a personal reminder, but
Thank
like
you.
yes, Betty is very good with the reminders, and we are thankful for it. Good. Other old business.
I have two questions. I know
Sure.
last meeting we spoke a little bit about that preschool money,
Yes.
and I'm just curious. We had talked about this idea of doing the lottery, these different permutations of using it. And I guess there is part of me that feels I want to make sure we don't move out
Yeah.
on getting this money to people.
So one thing that we're finding as we research that is that in terms of the community-based organizations and partnerships, it's hard to find them, both because of the supply in our local area. One thing we have clarified is we can go outside of the district boundaries. And you mentioned Roslyn Trinity is a good example. Fort Washington uses them; they're not in the boundary. It is hard though and we have to put out an RFP, which we're working on. For a preschool, which usually charges $10,000 or more a year to take that allocation of $5,400. We're trying to answer questions about whether that can be a differential, a credit, and so I'm trying to get some answers to that. So the challenge, we have to do the lottery no matter what. The lottery cannot be need-based. There's a waiting list. The lottery is audited, is viewed by the auditing firm. This is how it's done in local districts. We live stream it. Students have to be 4 years old before December 1st and have to be district residents. Those are all kind of like the given. One thing that Carol and I have been talking about, and I've sent it enough to our principals and haven't gotten a response yet, because the big ask is that having an outside organization work here. And there are some that have done it in the districts, Jericho, so on and so forth, where if you have space, they will pretty much do everything in your district. They will even come talk to the board and present, and it's in the district. So that in a way, that seems like more, but it might actually be here to kind of under control. So we're looking at those different options. There's a single point of contact with the state ed department that we've been trying to reach and get any questions from, and then Carol and I have been reaching out to local preschools and to other districts as well. So I do plan on doing much more with them and trying to get it done as quickly as possible. The other complicating factor in year one here is that people have already put deposits down for their fall preschool. So going forward, so we're going to get it started. I'll propose a model to you. We'll get more answers. We'll do the lottery. We'll get it started early in the year you can. It could be, I know Dr. Dolan has said January 1st because it's that first year as like a spring approach. Going forward, then we should have this funding. We can start doing the lottery in February for the following year.
I keep thinking it's such goodwill to be able to do this for people who have young children. Childcare is such a burden. Taxes are going up. It could be a real assistance to people.
I do think, and again, it's challenging, we could find some states, like even like one room in each school, to see what that would be. We have 1960, that's the total number for our allocation. Which in a given year we have about 160 to 200 incoming kindergarten. So
And we could also do it right based upon how we used to do the Ready Set Go program. Carol, remember Ready Set Go? You don't remember Ready Set? Oh, you were in high school. That's July. She was ready.
They were good.
But you could do it also too if we don't, if people have already put down their money for deposits for preschool, could we do it as an additional support preparatory program for students who just need that extra little something, and maybe not a full-time sort of preschool, but something. We used to have Ready Set Go, which they would test the students. It's more comparable to your summer program.
Yes.
They would test
Yeah.
the incoming kindergarten students, and if they felt they needed some additional support and preparation for kindergarten, this is before kindergarten was even academic like it is now, your child would be enrolled in the summer program, and then the budget failed, and we never got it back.
I remember, and I was looking at an old calendar actually, we had a summer program that ran in July, and that was part of it. It was like beginning of July to the end of July.
Yes.
This, unfortunately, with this funding, because it's tied to state aid funding, there are a lot of strings attached to it. It can only be used for universal pre-K. What you're saying, though, like we do have the ARPA funds and the CRISA funds, and that is much more flexible. You just have to report and document and keep records of how that's being expended. The part of what the slowness to this is because of all those strings that are attached and all the regulations of it, especially in year one. The flow of it as we get into year two, then we'll be ahead of it a full year out. So we're going to probably look into it as quickly as possible.
Thank you, because I know this has come up over the years, and the idea that you're sort of taking it on and making movement on it is very exciting.
It is the first year we did get the funding. That pre-K grant. We didn't get it. I got questions last year because Syosset some of our neighbors got it for the first time. Why didn't we? Sure, we actually didn't get it because of the formula they used. So this year we did. I think most districts did finally get it this year, and it should.
So I just want to reiterate how important I think it is also, and I think you have to do your due diligence, and I appreciate that you are doing that because you don't want to jump into something like this, but I do think it's so important. And even if we can do it in-house, great. If we can, and we do use one of those CBAs, and we're still giving someone $5,000 out of a $10,000 tuition, that's still, of course you're transparent about it and they know what they're getting, but that's still huge. I think whatever we can do to, help out the community would be great.
And that's a key question because I don't know by law if you're allowed to move it as you are.
Yeah,
I think you are.
So based on my experience, unless it's changed in the past few years, that is how it worked at the preschool.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll confirm that, and then that will help streamline the RFP.
Okay, thank you. Other old or new business? Sorry, old business.
Sure does. I don't know really where this fits in, but
If it's in right here, Rich, go for it.
in the past couple of years, during the summer, we've received reports, data about how our high school students did on AP, IB, Regents exam. Last year, we actually got the data on college acceptance. I was just hoping that we could get that again this year.
Yes, we will, and Dr. Smythe and I will work on this year. I was waiting for the AP and IB results to come in, and then we send you everything together. Yeah, no, it's coming soon, so it might be our next update. I'll have that. We'll have that.
Thank you.
Are we on to new business?
Uh,
I thought old, unless anybody else wanted to. Just another update on the Twice Exceptional program.
Sure. Well, I do want to turn this over to Carol in a minute because she's done a tremendous amount of work on this. We have met with, and Carol has met with schools from across the country, providers. We had a great meeting with the head of instruction, head of program for the Bridges Academy in Los Angeles earlier in the week, and it was really eye-opening. So I feel like we've made some great movement. Thanks to Carol. So, Carol, if you want to speak about it for a minute.
Yeah, so the first thing we did is we established a leadership team with a group of administrators who are working on the program. And our next meeting will actually bring in Dr. O'Hara on Wednesday as the instructional leader at the middle school. So, like Chris mentioned, I think at the last meeting, we're looking to put a pilot in place for the fall and then to grow a larger program where we bring in students from outside the district on a tuition basis going forward. We're grounding the work in the research that we've done. One of the pieces we think will be exceptionally beneficial for all the students in the district is the focus on universal design for learning. So we think that the work we'll do for the twice exceptional students will also improve the quality of instruction and give us opportunities to work in professional development opportunities across the board. So basically, yes, we've spoken to, first of all, we've reviewed the research, but we've talked to people in public and private school programs in terms of best practices, in terms of people we can identify to give us advice about the scope of the program. We've identified a few tenets we really want to focus on. So one is looking at the exceptionality, well, first of all, identification of the students. So we're going to work on an identification profile. And then what will be the components of our program, and then, again, bringing in the logistics of what it would look like next year. So it's been exciting research, but we think it'll benefit our twice exceptional learners, but also have impact for other learners across the board.
I mean, this is amazing, and people should know that this is a very important group of students who often get ignored in school systems because public schools, private schools are not set up to educate these students in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. So the idea that you have agreed to take on this this is going to change not only student lives but family lives. So I thank you, and I'm very excited to see where it goes.
I just want to thank Carol for everything she said, but I also want to mention the point you made. It's kind of like when we started our inclusion program, 15, 20 years ago. It will benefit the whole school.
I just want to add how much I appreciate that too. I think that you're doing this with the entire population in mind, even though it was initiated with this particular focus group. But that means a lot.
I told my friends who are school psychologists, I said, wow, our schools are like 1976. North Shore is 2046.
That's great. Good to hear your voice up there, Carol. The only other old business that I had was I just think it's worth recognizing one more time what a great week last week was for those graduations for those kids. The weather worked, warm in those robes, but middle school moving on was fantastic. The high school graduation was fantastic, and it is such a great celebration. It's not about us, of course, but it is very gratifying to be out there and seeing these kids and their outcomes and the precipice between, I'm not going to say the end of their childhood, but this transition between the launch they are getting into the world. And I felt really good about what North Shore had given those kids. And as I, shook hands with each of them passing by, you saw all the different personalities, and you realized they're all going to accomplish so much and go in so many different directions, but it was really, really heartening to see. So I felt so good about North Shore last week. I thought it was worth mentioning. So, and it was really great to have everyone there and to participate in that and to have some fun. I have a photo on my phone of all of us, so it was good. I'll have to share that. Other old business before we transition to new business. New business it is. Marianne.
New business. I'm going to share with you an email from a faculty member at the high school to the principal. Hi, Eric. This was on the cancellation of the Regents. I have to go on record in saying that I think this is a tremendous mistake. We've been talking about finals and skills and tests all year, and it's time for the students to sit down and demonstrate what they know. All of our no harm policies, in my opinion, have done a tremendous amount of genuine long-term harm. Classrooms are a mess and students feel entirely disconnected from instruction that is happening in front of the room. It's like it doesn't matter to them because they've been taught that they can be elsewhere while they're in class and everything will be fine. A lot of us, I'm sure, saw the piece in the New York Times recently that very clearly articulated the problem that we are having. Clearly, the effects aren't limited to high schools. College professors are getting a problem with students that are simply not present in the lecture hall. And classroom discussions, Socratic seminars that used to be the cornerstone of our instructional practice here. They are nearly impossible now because kids have been taught that their focus and attention simply is not necessary. The final decision is about more than scores and grades. I think it's about what we value instructionally and how we want our classrooms to run. It's about learning. I'm not talking about punishing kids with giving them bad grades. I'm talking about holding them accountable for the information and the skills that we are giving in class. Since we have left the pandemic, they have not been held accountable in the slightest, and they have understandably responded with apathy. We are encouraging them to behave this way. My instruction at this point of the year is entirely built around final projects and final exams. Does it help anyone to tell the kids that these things no longer matter? I'm going to be held hostage in my classes from here until the end of the school years, and the kids are going to continue to party, because why not? That was something that was shared with me. I would like to revisit the no harm policy. I know that it's part of it comes from the state, but I really feel that I'm hearing from faculty members, I'm hearing from monitors, aides, that the kids are not coming back into the classroom the way that they left. That telling them that it doesn't matter if they do the project or they do it poorly, there's no incentive for them to do it well. They spent a lot of screen time at home, which, it's great using technology, but we need to get these kids back to talking to one another, to having discussion. And it doesn't have to be a letter or a number grade, but there has to be some accountability. And they are also, I've also heard that they feel that they can't in any way, I don't want to say reprimand, that's a harsh word, but even restorative justice isn't possible because of this situation. I've heard instances of high absenteeism with students, and then you have to figure out how to get them through because you can't fail them. I just don't know that. I think we're doing harm to our students. I think we're making it more difficult for these teachers to teach. We're making it more difficult for the students who want to learn. I heard, I don't know if it's true, that only 4 students showed up for the physics region because it was optional. I just don't know where all this is going. And I think if we just let things ride and we don't take a hard look at this year, it's only going to get worse. And I like the email said, no one wants to fail a student or punish them, but we do have to hold people accountable. So I would like to take a look at the no harm policy, because we never really revoked it.
Yeah, I'm aware of that message and the concerns that teachers raised when we instituted that. I think there's a lot there. There are a lot of reasons that have come up from time to time over the last year. When we had the Tri-State review in March, the line I always go back to, I think, is in the same spirit of that email. We want our kids back, and I think they were speaking to a lot of those same issues. There was a consensus that came from the team. I know there were some faculty who didn't love that policy, but I think it's a moment in time. It's a moment in time. Now we're moving forward. I think these are discussions that Mr. Contreras and I have had. Right now, the middle school is beginning to do work on norms and protocols as part of curriculum work. So there are discussions happening that honor a lot of those concerns that were expressed in that email. And I think too, we are entering a year where some of those reasons for forgiveness policies and things like causation isn't there in the way
Right.
that it was.
So if we could, if the board is in agreement, could we get as this policy is being looked at? 'Cause it sounds to me like from what you said that you are looking at this policy with the building leaders. I assume you'll be looking at it with the curriculum leaders. That we get some updates to the board about that policy, how it's being modified, how the plan for implementation. Obviously, you can't go from A to Z right away, right? I mean, there has to be some transition period. Um, how that's going, how you're I think it's important for us to talk about that and think about that.
Yeah, and I just want to say, yeah, I think, we did not have midterms because of the completion of the January regional exams. So these are things that I don't think we'll see going into the school year. But I think, there's so many issues there that we're going to try and handle the complexity of it. I think, the high school in particular, our asynchronous model, going to school every other day. I think there's a legacy of that we're still working ourselves out of. So there are a lot of moving pieces there that we're going to come to.
It's a multi-layered issue, and I don't think there's one solution to addressing it. And I think the way you do it at the elementary is going to be completely different than the way you do it at the high school, right? You don't have the same population, but it would be. I would like, as a board member, to be apprised as to how we're addressing the modification of the no harm policy and how that's going, what impact it's having on students, both socially and emotionally, academically, and what impact it's having on our teachers and our staff. Because I feel that, we talk a lot about mental health issues that have arisen from the pandemic for our students. We don't talk about what it's done to our faculty. Just like when we were talking about the homeschool, right? We talked about what you mentioned, what a toll that took on the faculty, which is not something that would have necessarily occurred to me. So it's just, I would like, I don't know if anyone else shares.
I'm just curious though, and maybe I'm wrong, the do no harm policy was something that was specific. It's not an ongoing policy, right?
It really was, yeah. And it was a point in time this year, and from what I've heard from districts, and a lot of our neighbor districts do this, it was for this year, given the specific set of circumstances. We're starting to hear about regions, rates across the county not good. So part of the rationale for it, I think, was to prevent the loss of credit and things like that very intricately for this year. But no, I think to your point, no, we have not talked about that at all.
Right. So there's no do no harm policy in place for the upcoming school year.
Yeah.
Correct. And Hochul, right, in her it might not be Hochul, but New York State made the recommendation that the regions not be counted against students this year, correct?
It just goes back to what Trustee
Yeah.
referred to. They canceled the January regional exams, and then they institute this thing, an appeal process. So an SA, or superintendent's appeal, where you could bypass the regions as a passing regions as a means to graduate, which had always been a requirement. So they were kind of instituting their own no harm policies.
Right, that's what I said.
That
Some of
led
it
a lot
was
of
state
us
mandated.
districts to say, okay, well, we're going to do that for finals. And I think when that was done, that was part of the trigger when the state did that, was to trigger districts to be concerned about how serious students would take the exams and what would the impact be on their final credit bearing average. That would then impact graduation rates and things like that. So there was definitely a domino effect.
Right, because the state in that, I guess, memo, whatever they released, and correct me if I'm wrong, said that it's kind of based on the idea that if a student is passing a class but failing a region, should they then fail should their transcript
That
then
was the-
that's sort of the core of it. So how you perform on one day, should it negate everything that you did on the other days? And go ahead.
No, I was going to say it was a series of events which began with the cancellation of the U.S. History Regents a few days before we were supposed to administer it for the first time. So it was a little chaos across the state because the state made these changes kind of at the very last minute, and then the appeal came in right after the next week.
Yeah, I understand all that, and I know some of it was state mandated.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is that it's gone beyond that. It's gone beyond not punishing a student for failing a class because they didn't pass the regents. It's permeated many aspects of the classroom, the building, the culture, and you're just, even if the policy is not a formal policy in effect, you just can't turn a light switch on and off, right? So I mean, children don't hand in projects or papers, or they hand in nonsense. And I think, from what I'm gathering, some of the faculty feel that even in those everyday work in the classroom, that there's a no harm policy. So what we think and what New York State thinks and what the faculty thinks, there's a lot of misinformation out there on board policy. I'll have people say to me, well, that's the board policy, we can't do that. I'm like, that is not a board policy.
That was administrative
So,
decision, yeah.
But other things as well. So if I'm not intending to have the discussion here. This is not really the place for it. But I would like to have a discussion about the no harm policy, what the ramifications have been. How will we unraveling that policy?
So I agree with that we should have a visitation of the no harm policy, seeing how it, not a revisitation, let's call it an analysis of what happened, because as Andrea points out, it was set up for a circumstance that was unique to last year. But I think it's important to understand how it worked because next year is right around the corner. I also, to Marianne's point, this is one faculty member's thoughts, and I don't know if they're a tenured faculty member or not, but certainly it's a voice that should be part of this discourse. But I would also say there are a lot of absolutes in that statement that I don't think I really agree with. And that's not my experience, my understanding of student experience. Separate from the no harm policy, I think there's a lot of conclusions drawn in that letter that I find to be a vital force and a vital part of a conversation, but not the summary of what I believe the experience of our students and our faculty is in our schools. I think the idea that there's no accountability for our kids, there's apathy, or people hand in whatever, I don't think that's really a fair representation of what's going on in the school. And so, separate from the question of how we revisit the experience that the no harm policy had on our students, I think it's important for the record that that opinion, while valid, everyone has a valid approach to their perception of what's going on in the schools. And Marianne, your voice, you share that. You're concerned about that.
I'm concerned that I'm not saying this is what everyone thinks. What I'm saying is that that even one faculty member would think that this is problematic, and I've heard it on multiple levels about. I mean, you see it on the news about the impact of the pandemic and on the impact of these policies and the remote learning. I mean, we talk about it, and I think this is like one area of that. And I'm not saying this is the end all and the be all, and everyone feels that way. I don't think I just it concerns me, and I would like to take a broader look at what we think, what's happened, what are we doing in the future, how are we, working on the culture? Because like my point was, you don't just one day say, okay, it's May and June, and it doesn't matter whether you take the regions, and then kids think in September that now what matters, right? I mean, you don't change a culture overnight.
I think it's a classic push-pull we see in a lot of our discussions here, whether we're talking about homework or discipline, the idea of accountability and more traditional approaches to those things, like testing. And I think that with various places on the map, I think the board has at least, I think everyone's, so there's some value in testing. Some people believe it has more than others. But I think any of these issues, there is a range of approaches and takeaways to these things. And I agree with you. The idea of no accountability for our students would not yield good outcomes for those students. So I think the question of how the no harm policy worked and within the larger scope of how we're approaching that with our kids is important. It's an important one to have. But I want to, one of the things that I mentioned this at Dr. Melnick's memorial service, and I had the takeaway as well, was just how data-driven we've always been in this district. And so if that's a concern, and certainly I'm glad Mary Ann raised it, we should look at that and see how does the faculty feel about this as a whole? How are our students performing? How have things progressed? How, we talked about this. The pandemic is not just not over, and that it's people are still getting sick, and we monitor these things. But even as it recedes somewhat into our daily lives, these kids are still very much affected by it. They had a chunk taken away of their development that can't just be put back in and closed over. And so the effect of all those things is a holistic approach to this. And I think I would want the administration to be able to report on this, whether we merge that into our reports on student achievement and how they're doing, or we did last year, a report on sort of a follow up from the pandemic and engagement. The rest of those things is critical, separate from a look at the no harm policy, which I think is a discrete thing. That I do agree with Mary Ann that we should be looking at that. I think that's important.
I do want to add the do no harm policy is just for Regents classes. It's not for other classes, and it only applies to students who perform correctly. I'm getting confused. Who perform lower on the Regents.
Well, it's a chicken and the egg. It applies to every kid. If you know there's no harm policy, some students are going to say, "Great, here's an opportunity to raise my grade," and some students are going to say, "Free pass."
But remember, no, it's not, because the Regent score still appears on the transcript.
That's true, but different. It's 215 kids in that class, whatever it was. That's 215 different approaches on Monday, and 215 more.
So
It
sounds like there's two things happening. Number one, a look back and understanding how we got to where we are. But I think it is undeniable that the rigor has been impacted by the pandemic and the expectations have changed. And so I think it is fair to discuss the path forward. And to Marion's point, you can't go from, hey, we know everybody had a tough time and we're going to give you space to catch up, to, okay, you're caught up. So we're interested in the dialogue, and I'm interested in the plan, and being really methodological about it, and data driven, right? And are there courses of study that are more impacted than others? Are there buildings that are, grade levels that are more impacted than others? I think that we talked about this early on, and the early readers were particularly impacted, and have they caught up? So I think it is worth, as a district, for us to be really knowledgeable about where our deficits are and what is our plan to fix it here 2 years out of a pandemic.
Right, and thank you. And it's not just.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. It's not just.
Please, you're up next.
No, sorry. It's not just the Regents, Andrea. It's permeated the classroom on a very different level. Technically, the no harm policy is a Regents policy, but it's not been just applied in a high school Regent setting.
I guess I am very concerned about making building level decisions based on anecdotes and anecdotal evidence. So I really, and we've said this before, but I want the data before we say that this is how it is in every classroom. I'd like to see the data and hear from all of our faculty. And has the rigor, is it not as rigorous, or is it? Because I don't know. I would like to hear from, I mean, from what I'm hearing from students, they are still working as hard and they are still striving for, getting into those excellent colleges and what that, that means working very, very hard. So I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm hearing what everybody's saying, but I think it's really dangerous to make decisions without actually having the data.
Well, that's the point of bringing it up in
Exactly.
the business. It's not to make the decision here
Yes.
based upon one email or things I've heard around the supermarket. It's to bring it up, to take a look at it,
Yes.
and get that information.
Yeah, I agree, but also that statement is that was a very impassioned statement. So it's hard to hear that and not think, oh my gosh, this is really what's going on in all of our classes. So it's a conversation starter, and we've had that conversation. I want to try to bring it a little bit of closure, but Marie, you said you have one more comment.
Closure comment.
Okay, yeah.
It's a close. I think just in the light of stepping back a bit to this whole question of how we communicate to the community. It's not just about the budget, right? It's about how we function. I remember when I sat out there and often wondered, why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z? It's because what the board is, this is the way this should go, right? One of the things I took from Mary Ann, from bringing that letter, is that faculty member did what he or she was supposed to do by addressing this situation with the principal of the building, right? Presumably, there are many other faculty avenues, right? Meetings that the administration holds with the faculty in each building. Each building principal holds it with the faculty. They have their union meetings. They have various avenues for discussion about these issues. The board can be effective, right? Hearing back from the administration in the way we have asked today. I think the way this discussion went was good. We eventually got together to ask for the administration to do the research, to bring back what the issues may be, and we can then affect, potentially, if it's appropriate, policy or our opinion into the discussion. I think that everything we do up here, we make so many assumptions about the community understanding what we're doing, and I thought it was a good opportunity to point out that we don't fix this problem. We are now asking the administration to study this, though we happen, typically that it wouldn't come directly to a board member. The faculty member did do the right thing going to the principal, and perhaps then chose to show it to Mary Ann, who chose to bring it here. But again, it was a good conversation starter, and now we've got a reason to get more.
That's right. Bring up a concern. And trustees are sharing their concerns. It's the purpose of all business and new business. And then task the administration with identifying, is it how pervasive is the concern? Is it actionable? Is it anecdotal? Where are we? And then what would you propose as a solution that will be consonant with who we are as a district? So with that, I think I'm going to move on to other new business, unless I'm leaving anyone really hanging out there. I'm sorry, where are we?
I thought we were going to talk about the capital reserve too in new business.
I can bring that up.
I thought that was part of
You
it.
can give an update, sure.
So we began to talk about possible capital reserve, possible date late November, early December. There's obviously a lot of planning that needs to go in and a lot of information I need to get you in terms of finalizing that timeline and also the scope of work and the financial scope. John Hall and I met with Team Seedy from Mamasi to start to generate ideas on process, and I provided you with a list of projects that Olivia Buati had developed. And what we need to do now is begin to get input from other stakeholders. We have a construction steering meeting at the end of July. That'll be a spot where we begin to do that as well. What is difficult, what is challenging is that we come back in September and we need to really get community input very quickly to nail down the scope of projects and the amount of work that we're looking at. So that it will be an ambitious timeline, but we're hopeful that we can beat that in anticipation of an early winter
the administrators, though, the building leaders are in during the summer. So would it be possible we have another construction steering committee meeting?
Yes.
To speak with some of the building leaders and see what they would add to those lists. And one of the items I noticed was not on there, which we've been talking about since the inception of the dance program, which I might add does substitute for gym, is that we don't have a dedicated space for a dance studio. I mean, I see the Black Box Theater, but that's a whole big addition. You could do, all you need for a dance studio is a marley floor and some mirrors and maybe a changing room, maybe some bars. But that program is really growing, and I know there's been a demand in the middle school that hasn't been met. So that'd be like one thing on the list that I would see, and that maybe if, and of course I don't know what's going on in every building, if you have the opportunity this summer to meet with some of these directors, some of these building leaders, and get their input, that could then be brought back to construction steering.
Yep.
And then we can get the community input and then prioritize what should be done, sort of in what order.
Yes. Tina and John and I discussed that actually. So we're going to, I'll be doing that. We also have an administrative retreat coming up in the second week of July. So that was something we're going to talk about too, the broader spectrum of our goals and our focus for the year.
Good. So, can I add to the discussion? It's only 4. So yeah, I agree that I think we need direction from the administration on, because I looked at the list and just wondering how to prioritize. I think some of those are immediate needs that really need to be at the top of the list. I also want to reiterate that capital reserves are how school districts fund future projects, and it's how we maintain our infrastructure. And I think we need to do a good job just getting that information out to the community. There are school districts right in our backyard where the reserve propositions don't pass. I mean, we have the same issue, and their infrastructure is in disrepair. We have limited funds, and I think a capital reserve is the fiscally prudent way to fund these projects. We have equipment and fields that are approaching the end of their useful life, and it's disappointing that the athletic reserve didn't pass last year, because we'd have to be having a different conversation. We would really just be talking about the non-athletic needs, but now we have to kind of talk about all the needs. And we have over 50 acres and over 250,000 square feet of office space and classrooms that we have that need upkeep. So I think a capital reserve is the fastest mechanism and probably the most effective mechanism for legally saving money to finance the project. So I'm definitely a proponent.
Chris, I think that makes a lot of sense for August 25th. Even if it's a short bullet point, put it on the agenda. That's us. Yeah, but the time level will already be getting short by then. And the prioritization is key, as you said. There are more things than you can do, and it's sort of reminds me of like the baseball all-star team voting, where you have like the input from the fans, and you have the input from the players, the input from the press, and everyone comes together and figures out what the right, or somehow. Yeah, exactly. It's five per day. I voted once, and I was like, this is really cumbersome. So.
Did anyone count how many items were on the list? 100.
Exactly 100.
There are 100 items on the list.
How many
And not a dance studio. I'm just saying.
I like the dance studio idea. It was kind of funny because it made me think of like renovating your house. Like, where do you want to put your money? You want to put it in the kitchen because it's fun, but the hot water heater needs to be fixed, right? Or the roof needs to be fixed. And you look at that list, it's so tempting to pick all the fun stuff, right? But we have to look long term. And I really think we have to look at safety as a priority, right? When I read about elevators and things like that. Also, I think some things were safety items that you wouldn't even realize, like the second large gym space for recess in the middle school, right? That would help with the supervision issue that sometimes takes place in the middle school. And I think also in terms of sort of the more glitzy projects, like things like outdoor learning and like
like the wellness center. It has to be part of a larger conversation in terms of how these spaces or areas are actually going to be utilized in the program, right? So it's cool to have a wellness center, but how are we actually going to use it long term so that it's a fiscally responsible thing to build? And I don't think you can assume that just because you build it, people will come, right? It's got to be built physically, but also built into the program somehow. And I think also in developing the capital reserve, putting in items that excite different stakeholder groups is important. So athletics, dance, performing arts, teachers, when people think about their own experiences in the school, seeing something in that capital reserve that speaks to them, I think also helps to generate motivation to come out and vote. Of course, this is going to be a different day than a regular election day.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece when you go through that with us. The community input is going to be huge. We need to hear from people. We need to hear what they want, and we need to make sure that we are obviously people aren't likely to say a failing septic system, please, like us are really excited about. So there has to be some input. Of course, we can balance those things, but community voices is huge. We know that from the bond at the end of Dr. Melnick's time that we decided not to put forward. We did that in large part because it did not have the community voice involved. So I'd love for that to be part of the presentation on the 25th of what the plan is to engage folks quickly and thoroughly. All folks.
And I do think it's important. I think it was a problem with the bond when we did the bond, that there was nothing for. I heard people say there's nothing for athletics, and we did put in the locker rooms to sort of address that, and then we took it out. And I think with a capital reserve that's only focused on athletics, I think you're not going to get the people who have fun and performing arts kids. And I do think that since that list was generated, you're going to have changed space. The middle school is going to look very different, and you're going to have that big open space that maybe will resolve some of those issues that when that list was generated didn't exist. So I think it will be important to look at how our buildings are now reorganized at the middle school and the high school level, and at the elementary level with the media centers going on. And I think that's going to influence how that list looks and how it's prioritized.
There's also opportunities for revenue too on that list. If you look at the charging station infrastructure, we spoke about that, how that also could generate revenue for the district going forward. I don't know if you have more items like that. I glanced through, I couldn't find another one, but maybe you do.
Can I add, though, that in the context of presenting this to a vote when we know that the tax bills are going to be, in October, that it would be tone deaf for us to not be really meticulous about making sure that the things that are on that list are really, that we understand, that the resources are going to be increasingly tight and that these are the things that are needed. I understand the desire to include the fun things, but I have a concern that if we don't hit the tone right, it could be a very big turnoff to voters to try and to even if it's money we have, right? It's hard to understand that it's a savings account, but it failed in the past, right? So I hate to be the Debbie Downer in the context of all these fun things we want to include, but I feel the burden of that and the need to share it.
I think the lessons from the previous time, also making sure everyone realized this is you have 10 years to expend these funds. Inclusion in the capital reserve doesn't mean we're doing it right now. We are going to have it. It doesn't mean we're doing it at all. And it does mean we know we have this very difficult 5-year, we can start calling it a glide path, but a steep, a transition path, we would call it. But that we have the full 10 years to get through this. That capital reserve will live beyond that. So I'm sorry.
And something that I mentioned, I think to you, Dave, is knowing that we have the forward thinking of knowing that we have a current field that is ending its lifespan, and this is a 10-year, and it's a 10-year scope for this funding. Maybe we should be thinking about the replacement of the field we have not yet replaced. Like really showing that we are thinking long-term and being very smart about what we're.
The field and the track. Track is coming to
Thank
its
you.
end of useful life too, and we've been having blisters. And I walked it the other day to see if I could see, because apparently it varies with the weather. I could not see the blisters. I did see some of the patchwork. So those are two tremendous projects. And yes, I agree. And that has to be your infrastructure project. So when there was, we have money that we had left, there were some not very sexy things that we are just doing with our capital reserve money, and it can all be tied in. But that's part of the prioritization, I think, like what we really need, and that's something I do think potentially can be a safety issue that we have to look at. But it's a bigger discussion.
Yeah, that might be the discussion we have. I want to ask for any other new business before we adjourn.
I have one little new business, and it relates again to LIPA and helping the community understand. And shut me down. This might be an appropriate thing that the district doesn't even ever do, but I know that there are tax opportunities for people of a certain age, and I don't know that everyone in the community knows how to take advantage of paying less of their school taxes. And perhaps and if it's in our purview to provide this service, perhaps we can look at a series of tent talks or different things to help people understand their tax bill, and perhaps I'm missing the vernacular the exemptions that they're entitled to do. Thank you.
But the board over the last decade has adopted a lot of exemptions.
The enhanced veterans.
Yes.
The veterans is a big example, but I do believe if you get the Gold Coast Library flyer, that there are some workshops on, I think Josh Laffington does them, and I think other people do, on the grievance process. I would hope that the exemptions are included in that. Some of them are income-based, so your enhanced star is an income-based exemption.
Without really
an enhanced star beyond the 500,000.
I don't. Yeah, there are exemptions, and I don't know whether we need to amplify other people's other people's messages, but to help the community get those resources and understand what they can do for themselves to help lessen their tax burdens. I think is a service that we could, if it's in our purview, it would be great to provide.
They just, people can, if you want a star exemption, you can get right on New York State.
Oh no. No, yeah, I think that's the issue, is that folks have to apply for it from the state and or the county, and so that information is so critical. Yeah,
I think it's a lot of opportunities there.
But if you I'll get the website for the next meeting, because whenever I do a closing, I give someone the information, and it used to be a form I would give them, but now it's an informational sheet on the star, because you have to do it electronically now. You can't do it, and that may actually be difficult for seniors to do.
I have one bit of new business. It's very short. I would like to ask our attorneys to bill the efforts they have done on foils and appeals to the commissioner as separate line items on their bills. Ask if they can do that.
They are a separate line item because they're billed out.
But they're all over the place. They're done sequentially in time as opposed to being in its own section.
Well, they're billable hours, so they're broken out.
They are broken out, but they're done sequentially, so they work on something on June 30th and then work on something on July 12th. There could be 20 other things listed in there. So I'd like them to be within each section as opposed to just broken out. Sorted. Grouped. Any other new business? Motion to adjourn? Great, all in favor? Great, now that we're done, Shelley had asked if you're still here, she wanted to get a board photo since we're all here, starting on a new session. Okay, then people have to go, so I guess we'll. Oh, photo first. Great.